Keith, I know it's been a long time between shows, but should we talk about Star Trek Voyager?
There's no time!
Mr. Parris, set a course. For home.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the very premiere, the pilot of Keith and Mike Watch Star Trek Voyager. Today we're going to be talking about Voyager's pilot, Caretaker. We have so much to talk about, but first we want to sort of introduce ourselves to any of the people who are seeing this for the very first time. So the concept of our show, which I promise will get better. Our pilots are always the messiest versions of this. I swear, we did Deep Space Nine. It got better. But the premise of our show some would say, ChatGPT said so, that my name is Keith Varney, and I am a Star Trek nerd. I have been a Star Trek fan since 1987, when Next Gen began. I became a fan because my uncle worked on the show, worked on Next Gen and all the way through all of the 90s and 2000s era shows doing the sound effects, and was subsequently joined by my older brother Sean for, guess what? This show.
Whoa!
So I'm the super fan. I'm here. I've seen Voyager a million times. I know all the characters and a lot of the lore. However, my co-host, my buddy Mike Indeglio, had never seen Star Trek in any significant way until we watched Deep Space Nine. And we watched and reviewed every single episode of Deep Space Nine. And you know what? He became a Trek fan. Now he has, unfortunately, committed to years of his life, now going to do the same thing with Star Trek Voyager. Welcome to the show, Mike. Tell us your relationship with Star Trek now.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Keith. It's wonderful to be back. I've been looking forward to this. I've been a little trepidatious, a little nervous. Trek had always been the other thing, right? I was a Star Wars guy for the most part. I enjoyed the original trilogy, and I thought you had to kind of choose one side of the fence. As I got older, the only Trek I really knew outside of pop culture and the original series and Shatner and such was a few episodes of Next Gen. So, you know, I had respect for the Picard of it all and the Worf of it all and Data and such, Geordi, but didn't really know much of that. Still have yet to watch the majority of that outside of some reruns on BBC America. So when we jumped into Deep Space Nine, I didn't know where that would take us. But jumping into the deep end and falling in love with that show and its characters and Trek's ability to make me ponder the gray area and reevaluate my ethics with you here and with our audience has really gotten me fully invested in the Trek universe. And so
you would say you were a fan of Deep Space Nine. You enjoyed Deep Space Nine.
Was that the question? I didn't listen much, but yes, I loved Deep Space Nine. I loved every second of it, and it took me a while. I grew into it. It found itself, and I found myself through it, and really enjoyed it. And so when you pitched this, and we had always kind of joked about moving into this next, but wasn't sure. And now that we're here, and we've already got the pilot under our belt, watching it, I have to say I was nervous. It was sort of like being on a first date, really weird. I was trying to be fully invested in the pilot. I had some feelings of comparison to
it's your second marriage,
my former flame. I tried to meet it where it's at, recognizing that it's gonna need some time to find its footing, just like we will. We have so many inside jokes, so many friends, so much family that we had invested in that show, and this, we really wanted to approach this as a continuation, but also something new. And so that's where we are, and I'm ready to do it. I don't think it's going to be any better, but meaning I don't think our show will be any better.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Us two idiots
Yeah.
will never get better.
But I'm excited to see where it's different, where maybe it's better, where maybe it falls short. I'm excited to talk about your brother. Let's talk about that a little bit. And welcome new friends that maybe have found us through the previous show, or maybe are finding us fresh in for this journey. It's cool to be on the ground floor. So if you're just jumping into Voyager with us and this is your first watch, let us know in the comments. I'd like to know who else is joining me the first time through.
Absolutely. First time through with us, but also first time through with Voyager. We found a lot of people through the Deep Space Nine show were discovering and appreciating Deep Space Nine for the first time, sort of like we did, or like you did, which is great. And so a little bit about the philosophy of our show. I think building a community of people watching it with us, whether you're a Patreon on patreon.com/KNM, get used to that, or just here on the YouTubes with us, or in the audio version of the podcast, which is also available. We really want to have a friendly, safe, inclusive environment where we can talk about all sorts of things and life, and everybody is welcome. And we're excited to meet new people and create this family that we did on Deep Space Nine and in our toy show, and that we're sort of developing. Just to set expectations, we are progressive folks. Politics and the world are going to come up. We're going to talk about it sometimes, not all times, but you know what? Star Trek is about that. And so we are going to get there sometimes. You're never going to hear us complaining about stuff being too woke. We are progressives, we're inclusive, and so if that's going to be a problem for it, and we might have some criticism for our current administration if that is uncomfortable for you. Totally get it. I'm sure there are other options available, but just to set expectations. But before we get too far, I want to say that our next segment, starting next week and in perpetuity beyond that, is our comments from our patrons. So if you would like to join our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/KNM. There's all sorts of bonuses and, bonus episodes. Mike does a live watch along of him watching every single episode that you can literally chat with him as he is watching it, see his face through every twist and turn. He makes that face a lot, so be prepared. On patreon.com/KNM. But one of the subsidiary benefits of joining our Patreon is I read your comments here from the YouTube. I'm going to do a change for Star Trek Voyager. And I imagine this will not be a popular change. However, it will be popular for the running times of our episodes, because as we're growing, we have more and more incredible, intelligent voices who have a lot to say about every episode.
That's true.
And what will not change is we will read every single word you put up there and appreciate it. However, for the comments that I read on the show, just for the sake of not burning ourselves out before we even talk about the episode, we're going to do a 100-word limit for the patron comments. And
it's
so
like the old Twitter days, Keith.
It's like the old Twitter days, yeah. But it's more than 144 characters. If you choose your words very carefully, that can be many more characters than that, just if you use really long words. So a couple of different ways. I will either read the first 100 words, or if you would like me to read a specific 100 words, just say start here, end here, and that is where I will do that. But if it's already under 100, no problem. We're good to go. So starting next week, talking about this episode, Caretaker, that is how we will do this next segment.
Keith, I just thought I would, just since we're level setting, we're taking the time. Yeah. Keith mentioned it earlier. I'll reiterate it. We do our best to put chapters below. So if there's a particular part of our conversation you don't enjoy, or it's not for you, and you want to get right to the good stuff, it's all there. But as Keith said, we don't segment out different parts. So
we're going to talk about everything.
We're going to talk about everything and anything. It's kind of a chronicle. It's really just our only way to hang out. Speaking of patreon.com/KNM, to keep things on the level, a lot of Patreon feeds separate gifts and different things via level. We do not. If you give $1 per month, you get everything. We hope that if you can give more, or you derive some value out of the podcast.
Bezos, if you're watching,
donate more, but we will never
add some zeros
that way. Last question, Keith. You mentioned that your brother worked on the show.
I was going to bring it up. Yes.
So my question to you is, can we get him on?
You know what? Here's going to be something fun for this show because he didn't work on Deep Space Nine, but he did work on Star Trek Voyager as one of the sound effects designers. And so a lot of those iconic sounds, if they weren't built by my Uncle Jim, they might have been built by my brother Sean. And while Jim, he's annoyed at me talking to him about Star Trek all the time, my older brother, he's too close blood related. He has to come on sometimes. So he's going to be on the show. This episode, we are going to ask him some questions about the beginning of Voyager and the beginning of his journey as a sound designer. So we will be getting into that. The longer form interviews with Sean, my older brother, will be on the Patreon page, patreon.com/KNM. But he's going to pop in and out, as Mike would say, pip and pop a little bit here on the Voyager episode. When an important episode comes up or he has something to say about a specific episode, we'll show a snippet of that interview right here in your main feed. So that's an awful lot of preamble, but if you know us, there's going to be an awful lot of everything because this is not a short form.
Less is more. More is more.
More is more. So now it is finally time. We need to talk about the pilot of Star Trek Voyager, Season 1, Episode 1, Caretaker. So we've got a lot of sort of recurring segments that we do here. We will be adding segments and deleting segments as we find what the voice of the show is.
Yeah.
And it's never a fully formed thing.
Nope.
It's organic. If you have ideas for segments, and drop in the YouTube comments here. This aired on January 16th, 1995.
Okay.
So this was it wasn't a mid-season replacement, but it sort of popped up right in the middle of a usual season of Star Trek, a usual season of television, because back in 1995, there were seasons of television, and it didn't get sort of dropped willy-nilly all over the place.
So Deep Space Nine was in Season 3?
Deep Space Nine was in Season 3.
And what was sort of because I got to tell you, I don't remember. I remember when Deep Space Nine was launching. I remember a lot of pushing of Armin Shimmerman. Like, there was a lot of Quark on TV and such.
Right,
and
sure.
I don't remember much of a marketing push of Voyager. I barely remember it, period.
Well, and I'll tell you why. Because you were getting a lot of that pushing on whatever syndicated network that Deep Space Nine was going to be launching on. This launched the UPN network.
Oh.
So
this was one of their, a launch title?
It was literally the launch title. So UPN went on the air on January 16th, 1995, and their featured program, opening night of UPN, was this episode.
Do you remember what your local UPN was called?
Didn't have one.
Oh.
Up in Vermont. And so we, in fact, in order to watch this, we had to get an old school satellite dish, like one of those big 6-foot ones. And we found what weird channel that Paramount beamed these episodes to the local affiliates on. So we got it a couple days early with no commercials because they were sending this out. The affiliates were taping this for broadcast later, and that is how we watched Voyager, because there was no UPN in Vermont at that point.
Mine was Philly 57, baby.
Sure.
Philly 57. I remember watching Buffy on the Philly 57. It then became, I believe, the WWWB, if I'm not mistaken, later.
It became the WB and UPN merged to become CW.
Right. There was a frog.
There was a frog. There was a frog at some point.
But yeah, Philly 57.
This was their big swing, and they wanted to launch it with a Star Trek series.
Keith, perhaps you'll link it in our description, but way back in the Wayback Machine, when we first launched our Look at My Star Trek Toys channel, we looked at the show Bible for Star Trek Voyager. You found it at a flea market.
That's right. In fact, yes, I should link it in there. Yeah. So
Keith
as
even
they
held
were
up the
promoting
slides where there was
yes. So I will if I remember to link it.
Was it microfiche or no? It wasn't microfiche.
No, it was an actual slide. So as they were promoting this, they send. So it's not really the show Bible. What it was a
promo, right?
The press packet. they were sending this out with the descriptions of the characters and promotional photographs and that kind of stuff to send out for people to write the articles that you didn't see. So we have that on our channel there. So go check that out. That's really sort of interesting. And there's some nuggets in there that, because this was produced before this aired, that didn't actually end up on the show because they changed their mind.
This shows how terrible my memory is. I had forgot all but Janeway. I'd forgotten every character. Everyone. Especially...
That's not a surprise.
Yeah, it's not. Especially my boy at the end, Neelix, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think I'd remember Neelix, but no.
You'd think.
No.
You'd think. Yeah, so... look, you're just starting. You're just meeting these people.
You're right.
And I'm excited to find out your impressions of all of these new characters that you're meeting. What do you remember of it? But before we get that, we have to, again, set the universe that we're in. The top song, Mike, and, long-standing tradition, Mike gives us a beautiful rendition of the week's top song, which this week was On Bended Knee, Boys to Men, Philly's Own.
When I'm down on bended knee.
There it is.
I do.
Thanks, buddy. Our top movie, Legends of the Fall, and the very young Brad Pitt and Anthony Hopkins. I don't know who was the I don't know who that is.
I don't know, but that poster did her dirty.
I don't know.
The perspective is just like kind of wonk.
Well, the perspective was fine. It's fine.
What was that movie about? I don't know. Brad Pitt being hot.
Well, yes, obviously. Was this the? Oh, I'm confusing this with a river runs through it. Like, doesn't one of them drown in the river? But I don't think that's it.
If there's not,
There it is.
if there's not a slasher in the movie, Keith has forgotten it.
Fair enough. I've forgotten a lot of things. The Time magazine cover, boy, girth of a nation. Guess what? We were getting fat, and luckily, we're gonna solve that by getting snatched and having polio.
Here's some. Did you see his latest campaign with Kid Rock and them just doing an ice bath together? Go check that out. That's not AI. That's real.
Would you like some measles with your
Newt
workout?
Gingrich, he had a big week. Yeltsin's big mess. Here's some news that's hard to swallow. Despite the health craze, Americans are fatter than ever.
And guess what? Even more so.
You should watch that Tyra Banks documentary on the America's Next Top Model. Just dropped on Netflix. It is, wow. Looking back at some things that happened in the 90s are so
Brutal.
much more problematic than we remember.
Deeply problematic. And the first year of the 2000s, first decade of the 2000s, our culture was so deeply mean, vicious.
And we're very nice now.
We're super nice now.
Yeah, things have definitely changed.
We don't aspire to be mean. We're just mean in real life. Anyway, so this episode was directed by Weinrich Colby, longtime Star Trek director. Did 16 episodes of The Next Generation and 13 of Deep Space Nine, so they handed it to a very experienced director for the exciting process that was filming Caretaker. So Voyager was created by Rick Berman, Michael Piller, and Jerry Taylor. And the three of them created the show and were the showrunners, especially at the beginning of it. It has a teleplay by Michael Piller, who also wrote Star Trek Insurrection, 13 episodes of Next Gen, and was also the creator and first showrunner of Deep Space Nine. And was also written by Jerry Taylor, the executive producer and showrunner of 101 episodes of The Next Generation. Also wrote 13 episodes of Next Gen and 3 of Deep Space Nine. So that is our creative force for the beginning of this series. Now, before we get too far into all of that, it is time for everyone's favorite segment.
Now Keith, waste your time with trivial trivia.
Yes!
Yes, this episode, Trivial Trivia is back, folks. It's not going anywhere. And this time, sometimes there's not very much. This episode, I have to just really tell about 3% of the trivia about the making of this episode. First off, just a couple of little things. The underground Ocampa City was, of course, filmed at the Los Angeles Convention Center. And a little bit about the casting of Janeway. This is a much bigger, longer story, but just to set the scene, the role of Janeway was incredibly sought after. Other people who were vying for the role included Linda Hamilton.
Wow.
Nicola Bryant, Aaron Gray, Lindsay Wagner, Patty Duke, Carolyn McCormick, and Joanna Cassidy. But the person who they first wanted was Susan Gimney, who played Dr. Leah Brahms on The Next Generation and Captain Benteen on Deep Space Nine. And they asked her to play the role. Rick Berman and Michael Piller did, but the studio rejected her, saying that she looked too young to be a captain. But they actually they did a screen test and screen tested her in uniform on the Voyager bridge, but they said no, too young. But I gotta say, like, clearly, they really, really liked Susan Gibney because she did, just a random episode of Next Gen where Geordi fell in love with her hologram. They brought the character back because they liked her. Then they cast her as a different character on Deep Space Nine, and then tried to make her be Janeway. Wouldn't happen. Also, the surface shots of the Ocampan homeworld were filmed at the El Mirage dry lake bed, which had previously been used as the surface of the moon Lambda Paz, where Picard, Durgo, and Wesley Crusher crash in Final Mission. Great, out in the field work. It looks so much better because it wasn't on a soundstage.
There's some great location work here.
Yeah, definitely. This episode was nominated for 4 Emmy Awards, and it won Outstanding Individual Achievement in Special Visual Effects. With their appearance in the pilot, Armin Shimmerman as Quark, Richard Poe as Gul Evek, and Mark Allen Shepard as Morn have all played the same characters in 3 different live-action series. They all appeared on Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager as these characters. The only other actors to do so are Jonathan Frakes, Morena Sirtis, John Delancey, and Michael Ansara. But I won't go into much of that in any more detail yet. Jeff McCarthy, Voyager's chief medical officer, also guest starred 5 years earlier as the soldier Roga Dinar in The Hunted. But Mike and I, because we are both from the musical theater world, know him from Broadway. You know him from Urinetown. I know him from Pirate Queen. Remember Pirate Queen?
Yeah.
Saw that 3 times.
Well, little Sally.
That was Urinetown. But I saw Pirate Queen 3 times because I kept getting offered free tickets.
Yeah, how do you say no?
And I was like 25. I'm like, I literally have nothing better to do.
Yeah,
I'll just go see Pirate Queen a million times. So the bridge of Chakotay's Maquis ship is a redress of the runabout interior from Deep Space Nine. So we were able to borrow a little bit from our sister show, although because they take place on a Cardassian station and a Federation ship, you couldn't reuse as much as you would think, and certainly as much as overlapping things like Next Gen and the original series movies reuse their sets constantly. Caretaker, you ready for this? Now, what's the top rated series right now?
On network television?
No, network television. What do they get for their ratings in terms of viewership right now?
No idea. Zero idea.
The top rated scripted series on television now, I bet gets 10 million viewers, 12, something like that. You looked it up. While we're doing that, Caretaker, on a network that didn't exist like 5 hours earlier, pulled in 21.3 million people, which was the highest rating for any episode of Star Trek. So people were excited. People were excited to see the new network and the new ratings. What do you say, Mike?
ABC's World News Tonight is sort of the top, like top, and that's like news, and that pulls in 8 million.
Yeah. So, gigantic. Like that's halfway to Super Bowl numbers.
Yeah.
Which is astounding. So, as I said before, this premiered the night that UPN launched, fulfilling a goal that had been in place since the 70s to have a Paramount television network, with a Star Trek spin-off as its signature series. And this was, of course, before Paramount turned to the dark side.
Yeah, but you know what? At least they're still merging and splitting and merging again and consolidating. You know, they know what they
Yeah, censoring Colbert. Not horribly dystopian. So supervising producer David Livingston was forced to take over as director for 2 days of the shoot after Weinrich Colby fell ill and was unable to work. This is going to make more sense as we continue talking about...
Didn't Weinrich Colby date Nurse Chapel?
That's Dr. Colby. But last name is correct, yes.
Corby.
But
No, he's Corby.
Corby.
Colby's a cheese.
Corby. Yeah, Colby's a cheese and, a German director. So, Scott McDonald has appeared in all of the Star Trek spin-offs, at least up until the contemporary ones. His most frequented Star Trek role was the Xindi reptilian commander Dolim in the 3rd season of Star Trek Enterprise. We'll get there in like 17 years. But he also played Tosk in Captive Pursuit of Deep Space Nine, one of the very good early seasons. And he was also in Hippocratic Oath and in Face of the Enemy on Next Gen, and in this episode plays Ensign Rollins on Voyager. Great actor. I thought he did like such a good job as Tosk, which is why I'm assuming they continue to bring him back. So filming on this episode began on September 6th, 1994. So it took a while to get this up on the air, which would make sense.
Yeah, I imagine Post was epic on this.
Post was epic, but the filming was epic. And I'm not going to get into all of this because Mike doesn't have enough context to realize why this was crazy. But the filming of this episode took between 30 and 31 days.
Yikes.
Now, a normal, episodic would be about a week. So 2 weeks maybe, because it's a double episode. It was a 31-day shoot. So the budget of this, wait for this, the budget of this, because of what we're going to talk about, this budget was $23 million.
Jeez.
In 1995, in 2026 dollars, that is $56 million to create this pilot.
A lot of SFX for sure, and a lot of location work.
And rolled into that is building these sets.
Yeah.
So these gigantic, elaborate sets that we're going to use for the entire series. So part of that is that.
The wigs alone for those bad guys.
The wigs are.
You know me, I have some troll doll PTSD, and they were triggering it.
That's true. Yeah, there's so much wig work in this episode.
Like, did you ever wonder, like, what a Klingon looks like doing the Walk of Shame? That's what those got. What are the bad guys called? The
Kazon.
The Kazon, yeah.
Yes. Well, in my description, I refer to them as trash Klingons.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's mine. I think somebody gave us that on the stream. But anyway, so just for context, the Deep Space Nine pilot budget was 12. So less than half of this to create the Deep Space Nine pilot. Next Gen was 18, but this was much, much bigger.
I don't recall the Next Gen pilot being a home run.
It was not.
Or not Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, I mean.
Oh, Emissary, I think, is the best pilot in
Star
Trek history.
I keep getting, when I think back to it, I just remember the scene with Jennifer getting blowed up.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a little hokey, because they're wearing those like swimmy trunks. That's what I think of.
Those are she wasn't wearing the swimsuit when she blowed up. Oh boy.
She could have been.
She could have been. That's true. It happened off screen. Yeah. So one of the reasons it took 31 days and cost $26 million. Mike, did you know
Probably not.
we temporarily had a different Janeway?
Oh, you mentioned that earlier, no? Yeah.
Yes. So, cast as Janeway was a French actress named Genevieve Bujold, who not only was cast, filmed for 3 days.
Yikes.
And
It's a Back
the
to the Future
saga
scenario.
is long and specific.
She was Bushowed the door?
She Bushowed herself the door.
Oh.
Sort of realized that this was a machine she did not want to be on.
Okay.
And wasn't ready for what this was all going to be. But I believe we have a shot of her playing Janeway. And so this is what Janeway was, and was cast as this, filmed 3 days, multiple scenes. There's, go to Memory Alpha, there's a huge long TikTok of the entire experience. It sounds like a nightmare for everybody, and was incredibly stressful for everybody involved. It just wasn't a fit. So one of the major costs of this episode was having to stop production, recast Janeway, and then refilm all of that. And
Yikes.
So after she left, they had to try to keep filming stuff Janeway wasn't in. And speaking of wigs, Janeway's hair was this gigantic kerfuffle because they had to they had to start filming immediately, but they didn't know what they wanted her hair to look like, so they filmed some stuff with her hair, then they had to reshoot it, and
I mean,
they
that's
had wig
wild.
problems.
But you figure these shows are built around the captain. I mean, it's the captain.
It's the whole thing.
Yeah.
The captain is the face of the show.
I'm sure not a small number of people had a little poopy in their pants.
There was a lot of poopy and a lot of pants. There was some Paramount poopy. There was some director poopy. Lots of cast poopy. It was definitely quite the kerfuffle. So there's a lot more detail to get into it. And maybe at the end of the season, guess what? We can actually see some of it. But I'm going to wait to show it to you until you have more context.
The stuff they shot or the poop?
The stuff they shot.
Okay.
I think you have enough context for poop.
Okay.
So that is what is happening in the pre-production of Caretaker. So normally this is where I would introduce our guest stars, but guess what? We have to introduce our cast
That's right.
because we haven't met any of these people. So our main cast, and Mike probably doesn't even know who's our main cast and our not main cast. But obviously, Kate Mulgrew comes in, saves the day as Kathryn Janeway. Apparently, when she came on the set, it was like, oh, okay, that's what it's supposed to be, thank God. And everybody sucked that poop back up and had a much better time.
She probably took it and shoved it back up for them because spoiler alert for my thoughts on this. For whatever shortcomings it may have or, issues you may have, the one thing you do that instantly is clear is that she is in charge. She is in command of that set, this show, this everything. And you're just like, whatever you need, let me know. I'll be here on my couch. You just tell me what you need and I'll get it for you.
And imagine the achievement when you're a last-minute replacement and they've already been filming for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
crazy.
come in cold, completely cold, and nailed that. So Kate Mulgrew saved the day. Yeah. The first of many times that Mulgrew will save the day. Robert Beltran is playing Commander Chakotay. Roxana Dawson as B'Elanna Torres. There are a lot of Broadway connections. Mulgrew has done a whole bunch of different plays on Broadway, including Equus. Roxanne Dawson was a closing member of a chorus line on Broadway. We have Jennifer Lean as Kess, Robert Duncan McNeil as Tom Parris. You want to know what he had been doing right before this? Not counting Masters of the Universe, he was playing Jack in the first national tour of Into the Woods.
Okay.
We have Ethan Phillips as Neelix, who also a Broadway guy. Saw him do November with Nathan Lane on Broadway, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. Robert Picardo as the Doctor, also a Broadway person, was in Gemini as a play, and then they turned Gemini, the play that he did originated on Broadway, into a musical, which he continued to play a role in with my ex-wife. They performed that Gemini the musical together. Tim Russ as Tuvok, also a musician, plays in a band currently, still acting. And last but not least, Garrett Wong as Ensign Harry Kim. And those are our main cast, big main cast, 9 main cast members. Not as big as Deep Space Nine, but still pretty big.
Maybe our first Harry?
Our first Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our guest stars include Basil Langton as the Caretaker, Gavin O'Herlihy as Jabin, Angela Patton as Ada, Alicia Coppola as Lieutenant Stoddy, Bruce French as the Ocampa Doctor, Jennifer Parsons as the Ocampa Nurse, David Selberg as Toscat, Jeff McCarthy as the Human Doctor, Stan Ivar as Mark, Scott McDonald as Rollins, Joshua Clark as Carrie, Richard Poe as Galt Avec, Keely Sims as the Farmer's Daughter, Erica David Johnson as Dagon, Majel Barrett as the Computer Voice, and, of course, Armin Shimmerman as Quark. And which not to say that Mark Allen Shepard never gets credited, but Morn was there.
Yes, he was.
As well. Well, you want to know who gets paid as an extra, but gets full credit in our hearts, Mike?
Well, Keith, that's our patrons. They are Brian Kilmer Biersick, Jamie Lubin, Jason Moe, Deborah, Peter Bank, Deborah, Holmes,
And Holmes.
Joshua Cronin, DC, Anton Thies, Mike, Alan Girton, Andrew Hayes, Alan, The Mysterious Household, Worf's Big Old Boot Shivs, Charles Babbage, John Kelly, Keith Blank, Casey Alexander, Harry Pothead, Carl Fisher, Alan Girton, Deborah Scott, Tren, Odo's Bucket, Goo Babies, Peter Howie, and Quark's Bar. Scotty B, Merritt Neath, Hardly Broken Composer, Byron Woosley, AI Sausage, yum yum, Ben B, Bob, Miles Davis, Jamie Rayborn, April H, Joe Saparito, John K, Brian from That Video Game Drive-By, Nikolai Ivanovich Lobachevsky, YouTube viewer, Hibernation Pod, Miri Holcomb, Rogue Knight, Lady Behind the Wall, Michael Champion, Andrew Ferry, Yanba, Pico Boy, Sanjil, Aroha, Brian Sales, Hibernation Pod. Of course, there's Engineered Maynard, Jerome Gibson, April H, James Hubbard, Roboethical, Chanel, Laura Morrison, Bob, NCC, Bolian for Soup, Lutz, Kremer, White, Eldridge, Kevin Miles, Ryan Caputo, Old Guys, Eating Oatmeal, Kelly Graybeer, Fedora the Explorer, Varsha, Michael Champion, Fire and Blood Wine, Christopher Martin, Chris, Admiral Funniest Frontier. And of course, those who send us stuff in the mail, JD Makes, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell, that's CRM Productions, Joshua Cronin, Kevin Miles, Justine, and our Chancellor, now and forever, Jen. Thank you so much for joining the team.
Wow, that timed out with the music.
You can be part of that team at patreon.com/KNM. And those who have gone above and beyond, they've given so much. We thank them. That's our Hall of Fame, Keith. You go ahead and take it on.
Our Hall of Fame, who have all contributed $100 of their real live money to us idiots, include Casey Clark, Brian Kaufman, Jason Moe, Joshua Cronin, The Mysterious Ann, Worf's Big Ol' Boot Shivs, Colin Dagan, Quartz Bar, Peter Benke, CRM Productions, Jennifer Massanova, Cloud Lover 69, Charles Babbage, Kevin Miles, Frank Rich, Bryant Kimple, Beersack, JD at JD Makes, Ryan Chesley, Yanba, Anton Thies, Merritt Neath, Jamie Lubin, Mike, Nikolai Ivanovich Lobachevsky, Alan, and Carl.
Wow, you
Fisher.
got it. I can't even believe it. Listen, you can join the team at patreon.com/KNM. We hope you will. Check it out. Join us for the watch along, yes, later this week. We will figure that out. Everything is posted. Thanks for being part of the team. Yeah, it's crazy how many names are on that list now. When we started, it was the few of the proud, and now it's a mouthful.
When we started, it was the zero.
Yeah. Oh.
It was like it felt so unbelievably like cocky and brash of us to even start one.
Yeah.
And then I can't believe people are there. It's pretty amazing.
It's pretty awesome.
So now what we do is we are going to talk through the entire episode with a gazillion screenshots in a little room that we call the screening room.
We didn't really have lyrics or a joke for this just yet, so some folks have wondered, how do we get, what website do we use?
Is there some sort of a transition?
How do we acquire all of the screenshots? And so I thought I'd let them know lyrically in a little bumper, Keith.
I'm excited. I haven't seen this.
This walks you through the whole process.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I capture screenshots when I watch the show.
That's amazing. So I'm not the only composer on the show. You take the screenshots when you watch the show. You don't fly the ship.
No.
But you take the screenshots when you watch the show. Fantastic. That's Mike playing on the guitar and doing his own singing.
Yeah.
Very, that's fantastic.
Very 1 o'clock in the morning.
Very. Is there any other time that you do these things?
All right. Well, is
Here
it time?
we go.
Let's talk it over.
Yeah. Clean up your video on the corner, though.
Oh, wait. What about it?
You're
Am I
bleeding.
Oh, that is absolutely an atrocity.
Did I mention we're autistic?
There we go.
All right. So in our teaser.
No, I'm still something's bleeding. No, it's right. No.
Yeah, that's
okay,
close
we're good.
enough.
Yeah.
So we begin with a text scroll reminding us who the Maquis are that we know from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
So so we are in season 3 of Deep Space Nine. We'll get more into that. So the Maquis, of course, are colonists and former Federation members who have broken off to fight for their freedom from the Cardassians after the Federation gave away their land, and they are considered outlaws. We begin with a giant Cardassian ship attacking the small Maquis ship. The Maquis ship is captained by a guy named Chakotay, and he is flanked by half Klingon B'Elanna Torres and Vulcan Tuvok. We do a little pew pew, boom boom fire, but they are deeply outgunned because they are in a 40-year-old Federation ship. And a little detail which I really like on the bridge, even though it's a redress of the runabout bridge, the LCARs are from the original series movies era. So like that blue and green and not sort of the full color thing. I bet they borrowed that from one of the Enterprises. Just the transparencies.
Oh, cool.
Nice little detail. So they're being chased by Gul Evek, who we remember from 2 episodes of Next Gen and 3 episodes of Deep Space Nine. But these Maquis, they're not about to surrender. They are going to make a run. Oh yeah, you can sort of see in that one there a little bit of those LCARs. So they're going to make a run for the Badlands. They hope to get lost in the plasma storms. Luckily it works, and the Cardassian ship is knocked out. And they think they're going to get away. But they are overtaken by a massive and mysterious wave. Uh-oh, that screen goes white. And this is where we hear our first playthrough of the Star Trek Voyager theme, a Jerry Goldsmith masterpiece.
So good. Across the board, I will say it now because we obviously can't hear the episode as we go along. The score of this episode was incredible. No expense spared, no MIDI up in this baby. We got a full orchestra, the brass is rocking, great score, great action score, so good. And the theme, Keith, I gotta say it, this could be an all-timer. The theme is awesome.
It's great. I mean, the Star Trek themes are all, it's been a long road, are all awesome, and they all really grow on you, which I really enjoy. It's gonna happen when you have 170 something episodes, but pretty cool. We'll appreciate that more. But now we have to talk about Act 1, where we arrive in a Federation penal colony on Earth in New Zealand.
I was waiting for you to say penal.
Yes. Well, in case you were wondering, are we children?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We're children. We're just very, very old children. So, Tom Parris is a prisoner working on some gizmo. Now, Mike, we should probably at some point watch an episode of Next Generation, which introduces Tom Parris.
Oh, so he's not a newbie.
Well, let's just say there's another character who looks an awful lot like this guy. Maybe played by the exact same actor, looking exactly the same with the same haircut, who also was an outlaw pilot who got himself in trouble killing some people on sort of a flying thing, and then got himself, kicked out of Starfleet. but just happens to have a different name.
Now, they sort of dropped the ball here, right? Because this should have been Eddington, yeah?
Eddington, yeah.
Like, he could have used a redemption arc instead of whatever the heck they did with him, which was weird, remember? That, like, weird mind games that session he had with Cisco and such.
Valjean at last. Yeah. I think I would have a hard time watching Eddington for 7 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, they were like, there was a hair committee, and they made a decision.
Eddington shows up in Voyager. Yes, just for Eddington. I fixed it. He wears a wig the whole time. That's funny.
This jumpsuit is putting us pretty close to his penal colony.
I mean, look, it's Star Trek. Deep V's are inherent. Mm-hmm. They're part of the furniture, the deep V's.
Location shoot, by the way. Awesome lighting,
shoot.
Well done.
Absolutely. So Nick Locarno is not Tom Parris. Possibly because you have to pay the writer who creates a character royalties for every episode of the series. So it's a very, Nick Locarno-ish new person, completely new character. So he looks up to meet Captain Kathryn Janeway. Janeway worked with Tom's father, who was now a Starfleet admiral. Tough to have your dad be an admiral. Mm-hmm. But Janeway needs Tom for a mission. We find out that Tom is a great pilot, and he knows the Badlands. And she needs his help to track down the missing Maquis ship from the teaser. Tom was a former Maquis member who was captured and thus thrown into prison. Janeway tells him that her chief of security was on the ship. And we learn that Chakotay, the captain of the Maquis ship, was a former member of Starfleet. And apparently Chakotay and Parris have a past, and they do not get along. And when Chakotay left Starfleet on principle, and Parris was thrown out, which Chakotay thinks Parris is a mercenary as a result.
The smarmometer is getting fired up here.
Oh, yeah. So if you remember season 1 Bashir, we got a little of that in Tom Parris.
Yeah, but I've like season 1 Bashir was a little bit of like a horny puppy, and Tom Parris is more like a full-grown horny like golden lab.
Golden lab. I'm a golden lab.
Like friendly enough, but probably gonna hump your leg.
Yeah. But it's you know what it is? He's an adult golden lab, whereas Bashir was like the puppy humping your leg, but didn't really know what it meant.
Yeah. This first scene with, what I love about Kate Mulgrew and Mulgrew. Okay.
Mulgrew is her DJ name.
Oh yes, Kate Mulgrew's spinning them tonight. This scene, 2 important things I note. 1. Just like I said before, she's super in charge. And I love that every line she delivers throughout the entire pilot, and it starts here, is delivered as such that I have 1 F left, and we're getting real close for me to losing that 1 F.
I've got 1 F left.
Yeah. And I love that, because there's an urgency that you would expect from a captain. I got ish to do. This is what I need from you. Love it.
Yeah, and we sort of need to establish that she is the captain. And it should not be lost on us that she's the first female captain lead of a Starfleet series. And with that comes, a lot of excitement, a lot of expectation, lots of misogyny of people, disliking that. So she had an incredibly difficult, in the same way that Avery Brooks being the first black lead in the show, like you have to sort of thread the needle with people who don't like new things and be able to hold on to your power and be the captain and also be a fully formed human being, which I think she calibrates really beautifully throughout this entire series.
Yeah, and the other thing that I love about this scene and this performance from both of them really is urgency, as I said before. The plot is not wasting any time. We're already on a mission. We're already breaking people out of the pen. Like, the pacing in the first bit really had me encouraged. It doesn't, I don't think it sustains that throughout, but it starts off with a bang.
Yeah, I mean, things always slow down at the hoedown.
Yeah, the hoedown
really slows things down. But we'll get there. So Janeway offers to help Parris get parole if he helps and goes on the mission. We cut to a small shuttlecraft taking Parris, now in a Starfleet uniform for some reason. Thought that was an interesting choice. But more importantly, guess where they're going? They're going to Deep Space Nine! Really fun to see our old friend. And, you know, at this point, because we're in some sort of a temporal time loop, this Deep Space Nine is still season 3, even though we already know what's going to happen. And Parris grossly hits on a Betazoid pilot. But we get our first look at the starship Voyager. And the pilot gives us some of the details. Voyager is Intrepid class, sustainable cruise velocity of warp factor 9.975. She's real fast. It has 15 decks, a crew complement of 141. So, just for context, that is much smaller than the Enterprise D. Let me see how many decks.
But
the
so
Enterprise.
sleek and svelte.
Well, and that's part of the deal. So, how many decks? So it's 42 decks, and it had like almost 2,000 people on the ship. So this is much smaller, and that's going to play a role, right? Because the Enterprise D has these huge amount of resources and a huge amount of people, and so
We're not plugging up any wormholes with this baby.
we're not plugging up any wormholes, and so it's not designed to be the big flagship. So 141. It also had a thing that made my little science nerd brain excited with the idea of bioneural circuitry. So there's actual biological matter connecting the circuits, which they say is more efficient and faster. Cool idea. We haven't seen that before. So we hear some more of the theme song, get a look at the ship. She's real pretty. Then we arrive at Quark's. Morn is there too, and as you pointed out on the stream correctly, it's way brighter than Deep Space Nine normally is. So
And all kinds of different Dutch angles and kind of cool stuff.
different angles, different lighting, because we're on a completely different show, which has a different light. And so Voyager is brighter than Deep Space Nine, which is pretty dark and pretty cinematically lit. But neither one of them are as bright as Next Gen, which was
this
incredibly
the first time? Oh, I guess yes is the answer. But is this the first time two Trek shows were running concurrently?
No. Next Gen and Deep Space Nine overlapped by, I think, one season.
Okay.
So I think Deep Space Nine was only alone for season 2, if I'm correct, in the first half of season 3. So yeah, but they did the handoff in either direction there. So actually, for reference, we are in season 3 of Deep Space Nine. So they just aired Past Tense Part 2. So we were just in San Francisco. So that is where we are with this. And, you know, as we'll address moving forward, because of how far away we're going to end up, they're not going to know what's happening on Deep Space Nine, which is an interesting little element there. So Quark is trying to scam a young ensign by the name of Harry Kim, a Chinese character with a Korean name. Because, you know, well-intentioned but very under-researched white people wrote this. This will be a theme on Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah, I'm glad we'll get into that because, you know, we'll call it for what it is, but we'll start positive. This is our first episode. There's a lot of diversity on the show. There's a lot of diversity, there's a lot of representation, and there's a lot of, you know, if we look at, and we don't forget even in present day, the importance of visual representation. So
Right.
how they're portrayed, we'll get into that. We'll call it like we see it, but just the fact female captain, multiracial, full rainbow assortment of folks on screen, that's big news, especially back in 95, 4, 5.
Well, it's sort of built into the DNA of Star Trek. Look, there's going to be an ongoing discussion about the attempted representation and how successful it is and how successful it isn't. But we appreciate the attempt. At least they're trying. And it is sometimes successful and sometimes not. More to say as we move forward.
Right. Before we give it too much credit, because what I was thinking early on through this pilot, specific to Kate is, or Janeway. Jeez, Kate, my buddy Kate, is they don't make at all a big deal about her being a female captain. She's just the captain, right? And there's something about that tacit representation that has a lot. I think is the most powerful type of representation.
And that's the one thing that Star Trek has always done beautifully, right? All the way back to 1966, right? Where you had people who weren't white on the bridge speaking just normally, and it wasn't... What was so radical about it is it wasn't a thing in 1966, because that was... The minute they left that studio, it was not that way. Right. So I think you're pinpointing exactly part of what makes Star Trek. Star Trek is the representation just by existing as normal. I think is a really beautiful and powerful part of this. So Quark is trying to scam Kim, but Kim tells Quark that he was warned about Ferengi at the Academy. Quark is completely prepared for this and starts extorting Kim for using Ferengi racial slurs. And I think Quark, he's scamming him. He still has a point. Kim is rescued by Tom Parris, who proved that Kim is indeed being scammed. Back on Voyager, Tom and Harry, having met cute, arrive in sickbay. The head doctor, Broadway's Jeff McCarthy, is not pleased by Parris being on the mission. He has beef with some mysterious story from Tom's past. More on this later. But Tom and Harry go to meet the captain. We arrive first in Janeway's ready room, where she is zooming with her boyfriend. They're warm and happy, and he's going to... What's that?
I was going to say the foreshadowing of is very thick.
Yeah, we get... Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I have it. So they're warm and happy, and he's going to take care of her pregnant dog while she's away. Chekhov's warm and happy relationship with a pregnant dog.
Yeah.
You beat me to it. So Kim and Parris arrive. Kim is very green and nervous. They walk to the bridge, and we see the bridge through Kim's eyes. And so all of these sets we are seeing for the very first time. Janeway's hair not sorted. In this...
Did we go sci-fi?
I'm getting a call from Passaic.
Okay. Is that your ringtone?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I never have it on, so
I've never heard that before. I know. It's always your work phone. Okay. Yeah, we keep changing her hair, don't we?
Yeah, this is not the best version of her hair. She looks a little like she had more than a Zoom visit with her bland white guy boyfriend. And we don't know what they're doing.
Goes no goozle.
Yeah, so I mean, especially when I haven't done a lot of Skype relationships, Skype relations, let's say, but I don't know if I would tousle my own hair. But who's to say? We're not here to judge.
Do they have a holodeck on the Voyager?
We'll have to find out, won't we?
I guess they got some hollow something because the dock, right?
That's true. That is true. So he meets the first officer, the 17th in a series of bland white guys.
He's got that Clooney hair, though.
He does have the Clooney hair. He's got the salt and pepper. Mm-hmm. I respect the salt and pepper.
Yep.
Or just salt in Mike's case. Yes. He's got the pike. Mike's got the pike.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, and those are back-to-back scenes. So filming this episode was a challenge, and Janeway's hair was part of said challenge.
Yeah, they've got the old actress underneath there. They just threw a wig over her.
I thought I was going to get to leave, but now I am Janeway's hair.
That was Keith's French woman. You can see him on tour this coming.
I do a lot of impressions, and they don't get better.
Wait, it's the same scene.
Yep.
Okay.
I finally went out for coffee. I snuck out. Anyway, Kim takes the station, and they head out, and Janeway says, engage. Voyager flies away from Deep Space Nine heroically. Little do we know the consequences of this little jaunt. So in Act 2, Parris
smells a fart.
Parris smells a fart in the mess hall and orders soup, another one of the sets, one of the mess halls. So we're introducing you to all of the main sets. We have sick bay, we have Janeway's ready room, we have the bridge, and we have the mess hall so far. So far, apparently. The replicator has 14 varieties of tomato soup, but of course, because it's replicated, none of them are any good. Parris spots Kim being talked to by the angry doctor and the first officer. He knows what that means. They are filling Kim in on Parris's mysterious backstory. And after they leave, we find out that he killed 3 people in a pilot accident on Next Generation. I mean, not Next Generation, a completely different character. He tried to cover it up, but then admitted the problem and was thrown out of Starfleet. It's a tough story for someone whose father is an admiral. So he tried to cover it up, then thought better, then they threw him out. So there's a bunch of little beats there for this character. So Kim says, we're still friends no matter how bitter you are. So maybe they're going to be friends. Who's to say? Voyager arrives in the Badlands and starts scanning for the Maquis ship. And this is when they start getting scanned. And we
your head
see
okay?
What's that?
I mean, is your head all right? Because mine hurts a little bit. They're hitting me on the head so hard with this redemption arc already. But no, it's a good setup, though.
You think he's maybe going to be redeemed?
I mean, it's a pilot. I mean, not him. It's a pilot, right? They got
Well, he's also a pilot.
Yeah.
Just saying, someone needs to fly the ship, Mike.
And I like the nuance you said there, right? Because they could have easily have just made him try to cover it up and get caught, right? And then so he's got a further way to go. But like you said, the kind of nuance of his ethics and his sort of, is his overt antagonism a defense mechanism? Is he really a sweetie underneath? Like, what's the
Is he
scenario?
a man at war with himself?
Whoa, dude. Once you drop your voice, it all became clear.
I know it gets really profound when I do this.
My hair is Janeway right now.
I am stuck in the hair, but when I get close to the microphone... Right,
and that's the big spoilers. In the finale, she comes out. She was there all along, baby.
It was really me who made the ship go. All right, anyway. We're getting scanned. Mysterious wave. Look at that bridge. Look how cool that is.
Now that is a cool
You want to know where your $26 million are?
This is exactly why you can't have cats on board. Because they would shred those seats apart.
I love my cat, Charlie, so very much. But he has destroyed my chairs.
Yeah. If you come in my house, you better hide your shoes. I mean, straight put them in the closet. Because my cat will shred them.
Your shoes?
Yeah, if there's any sort of like a leather or like faux leather feel to anything, Dee Dee will make it his.
I was really foolish to get faux leather chairs.
Yes.
I knew better. But they looked good and they were cheap at Costco. Whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, he's got a couple holes in them.
There basically are holes now. So they get nailed by this mysterious wave, and the hair went crazy again.
We're gonna find it.
So boom, fires, sparks, and we wake up in the aftermath. There's damage everywhere, and look out, first officer white guy. Let's say it.
Everybody's hair.
Hit everybody's hair. It wasn't good. But you missed your opportunity to hit your button. The first officer white guy now is, after the explosions.
I'm not following the joke.
Mike, he's dead as hell.
Oh. We gotta get our mojo back.
Dead as hell.
He is dead as hell. There are hull breaches everywhere, and Janeway takes charge and starts shouting orders.
It's a great shot.
The Betazoid pilot that Parris hit on is also Mike.
Dead as hell.
There you go. Whew, nailed it. So Kim gets the view screen on, and we see that they are right in front of a giant array of some sort, shooting some sort of power goo into space. And Kim announces the bigger news. And this sort of gets tossed off. I feel like we didn't really land this as much as they really should have. And he says, Captain, if these sensors are working, we're over 70,000 light years from where we were. We are on the other side of the galaxy. And here's where I think that they really should have put that into the stakes that they say later, because I don't do math. I don't know math. 70,000 light years, like with warp and all this, is like, how far away is that really?
Yeah.
And at the end, they're like, oh, we are 70 years away. That if we knew that then, right here in this moment in Act 2, and they said that explicitly, I think we would have a better understanding of the stakes of all the rest of the adventure here and the decision that Janeway's going to make later.
So much anxiety. I think about you miss your exit on the turnpike, and you got to now, I got to drive to the next exit and double back. That is day ruining.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like the Pennsylvania turnpikes, where like the next exit is in 35 miles. If you're like between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, oh my God, those exits are forever apart.
Ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like they really should have hit that over the head at that point in the show, because we don't know 70,000 light years off the top of our head to do that math. So in Act 3, outside of this giant array, we spot the Maquis ship, but there are no life signs on it. Janeway keeps trying to assess the damage. Guess what? The chief engineer is also
Dead as hell.
So Janeway heads for engineering, and Kim and Parris go to sickbay. We arrive in sickbay and find it on fire. Janeway, meanwhile, gets to engineering, and there's about to be a warp core breach. You want to know what happens when there's a warp core breach, Mike?
Yes, Keith.
It blows up the ship. So the warp core, think of it like a nuclear reactor on a sub. If that blows up, you are all
Dead as hell.
to help those whales.
you gotta save those whales if the warp core breaches. But
It might be whale food.
could be, yeah. But we see that she has a plan and keeps making orders. So in sickbay, they activate the emergency medical hologram. And they explain to the hologram that both the doctor and the nurse are dead.
Dead as hell.
I missed my cue. The EMH is already annoyed because Kim is a lousy nurse. And he says, a replacement must be requested as soon as possible. I am programmed only as a short-term emergency supplement to the medical team. And Parris says, well, we may be stuck with you for a while, Doc.
It's like that waitress at Denny's who's like, I just want to let you guys know I'm off in 5 minutes, so
Yeah, order
either
fast.
Order fast, or someone might take over. Hard to say.
Yeah. But, put a pin in all of that. So in engineering, Janeway's plan to save the warp core works. She clearly knows some engineering, perhaps has a background in engineering. Stay tuned. Then
I love,
they get
I'll interject. Keith and I
Yes.
talk about a lot. We love competency porn, and there's a lot of it happening here.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's also interesting that because we saw some of the set before, but now we're seeing the sick bay and we're seeing engineering for the first time, all battle damaged up. So we don't get to see it in all of its beautiful glory. It's all on fire and broken, which is interesting. So they get a call from the bridge. The array is now scanning them, and the people start getting winked off of the ship, and everybody goes, leaving the EMH alone in sickbay. Kim and Parris find themselves winked away too. a farmhouse in the south, and a lady with a cartoonish southern accent greets them. The whole crew is now on a farm, but they know this is just a holographic projection and that they're on the array. And a bunch of townspeople come up and warmly greet them. An old man starts playing banjo, and the townspeople start dancing.
So, real quick, just to check in, as a writer, Keith, as you
Yes.
all may or may not know, new friends probably don't know, Keith is a terrific banjo player. Actually, Keith, your banjo skills are better than this guy's, I'm going to tell you right up front, because he is not faking it well. But Keith, also as a writer, our resident writer, what do you think the tone was supposed to be for these? Is it supposed to be creepy and eerie? Is it supposed to be hokey and a comedic tone? What do you think the intention was?
I mean, yeah, boy. I mean, the result is it's really eggy and uncomfortable for everybody. I think they're trying to go for a like WTF mystery followed by like a Children of the Corn creepy. Mm-hmm. Right? I think it misses. It's a gigantic swing and a miss.
Yeah.
Because, you know, extras from Oklahoma the musical do not create a lot of mystery or a lot of fear, and it doesn't make sense. So the idea here is the caretaker scanned their database and wants to give them a familiar space to land in for a while. They refer to it as a waiting room. But why would you choose a waiting room from 400 years in the past? It's like if our waiting room was like King Arthur's table, like that's not a calming thing. That's strange and confusing.
Yeah, I feel like there's two different ways they could have gone, right? I think this is one of the areas where had they taken another pass and couldn't change the scene work, I would say maybe reevaluate the score, because the score follows the sort of folksy vibe, which then just adds to the sort of hoke factor. Had they gone with a sort of more mysterious vibe music, I think they could have created a juxtaposition that gave the eerie feeling you're mentioning. Or, like Keith, you said, if they had been in a very more present day vibe with just like slight things changed and they discovered that they were in some sort of a hologram, I think that might have been more interesting.
Why not keep them on the ship?
Yeah, or that, I guess.
Or
right. And they just, like that episode, I'm sorry, I'm going to not always call back to Deep Space Nine, but the episode where Bashir uses context clues to realize that
he's on the holodeck.
He's on the holodeck, and it's what is it, Section 31, right?
Yeah, like honestly, the whole Oklahoma of it all, it's really hokey. It just is. And it is not scary, and it's just. And I say this for those of you who don't know. Mike and I are in musical theater. That's what we do.
It's not about that.
That's what we do. We love musicals, but it is when I take you out tonight with me. It's really.
I guess you could argue. Let me go ahead and argue this, and then
Okay.
That the caretaker is going a little senile. And maybe his wires are crossed a little bit, and he's just...
Well, being senile makes you incoherent, not a cheese ball.
Like, they don't make it... He's not omnipotent in any way. He's
No.
not particularly would know their whole... He probably just heard, okay, they're from Earth.
Well, he's scanning their computers. He's scanning their database.
Right.
And, it's like if your Dropbox was nothing but, like, scenes from Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. It's very strange that they would choose that. But I think from a practical standpoint, okay, look, this is on the Paramount backlot somewhere. They've got their little farm setting or whatever, and the costumes they're just in the archive there. And I know Star Trek really does always reference time periods and styles of music from 50 years before the show, so it doesn't feel like, oh, here we are in the 90s, and it feels like very dated. I think they're trying to go for like a timeless feel.
Yeah, I mean, that all aside, it really didn't bother me that much. I mean, it's hokey, but it's not like it would be worse if we were bamboozled in any sort of way, but they instantly know what's going on. So
that does very much help.
Yeah.
That they realize this is ridiculous. Right
what
from
is
the
a
very
little more
start.
confusing to me, and perhaps I just missed something, is the holograms have more. It's like they know that they're play acting, right? Like, 'cause the second they
Yes.
reach the barn, then all of a sudden they become. So that seems weird to me too. Like, wouldn't they be programmed to just play act the whole thing? It seems like they have
Well,
more
no, because
agency than they should.
Well, but it's not a recreational thing. It's not a holodeck.
Oh.
They're not trying to keep kayfabe, right? They are just trying to keep they're prison guards, really.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so they're only playing, or they're like on a Disney cruise, right? Like, I'm Mickey Mouse, until like stop breaking the windows. It's like. Anyway, they try to figure out what's going on, and the corncob lady tells them just to wait. They're not ready to start. Kim finds something on his tricorder and heads to the barn. One of the townspeople tries to stop them, but they go in anyway, and they find a single life form and a holographic generator. When the townspeople turn evil and punch him out, we go full Children of the Corn for a bit, then they give up and show them what's actually happening. They're experimenting X-Files style on the Maquis crew. They're unconscious and naked on tables and getting probed through the chest. Now this is legit creepy.
But it's a quick scene, right? We should have just like shortened that. It's
Just like, if you're gonna go, like, go creepy to creepy. Don't go hokey to creepy, because it makes Star Trek look a little cheesier than it is. Like, I think, like, oh, we want some corn, is sort of exactly what the cultural idea that Star Trek is really cheesy. And, like, in your pilot, you're going to be cheesy. Like, push back against the, at least the...
Or for me, it was the missed promise. As a huge fan of Quantum Leap, right? I was all for... we're like, the array can send us to different time periods, and we're gonna just like, that's what I thought we were doing. So this actually ended up being a little less interesting to me than what it could have been.
Yeah.
But that's, we're gonna try. Keith and I often fall into the trap of like talking about what we wish the episode was rather than just adjudicating what it is.
For sure.
But that's more fun.
That's what we do.
Yeah, I kind of like the array could be anything, right? There's no reason the array couldn't be like make you time travel and stuff.
Right. Well, and that's sort of like a lot of these decisions in this pilot, which I think is generally successful, but a lot of these decisions, you're forgetting that they're deciding from anything you could possibly imagine.
Right.
So why would you make these particular ones? That's going to be my frequent question sometimes. So, time passes, and the crew wakes up, alive on Voyager. We don't really know sort of what happened in between, but Tosk tells Janeway that they have been on the array and have been experimented on for 3 days. They've lost 3 days of time, which I think is a really cool and creepy thing to have happened. And I wish we'd spent more time on that too.
That's funny you say that, because that is interesting. And I've watched this twice, and that's the first time hearing of it.
Yeah. So they were like probed for 3 days. So the
Maquis people.
No.
Us?
Oh,
so we're getting probed that whole time?
Yeah.
So how? Are they in our brain balls? Are we getting O'Brien?
Well, in the barn, once they discovered what was happening, I think they knocked everybody out and probed them all. It took 3 days and put them back on the ship.
So it wasn't happening while we were in the hologram space. This was like in the commercial break.
In the commercial break. In the commercial break, the scary and interesting thing happened.
Oh, that's a missed opportunity.
I agree. So we find out that everybody is back except for Kim. But all of the Maquis members are back on their ship as well. So they,
however we escaped Ede, we brought them with us.
Well, we didn't escape Ede. The caretaker put everybody back.
Oh, okay.
So she hails Chakotay on the Maquis ship. He's missing a crew member as well, Torres. But they agree to team up until they figure out what's going on. Chakotay, Tuvok, and an extra beam onto the bridge. Janeway greets Tuvok and tells Chakotay that Tuvok has been an undercover spy for the Federation and is currently the chief of security of Voyager. Chakotay takes this much more in stride than you would think, but he does. What he does spar
game
with-
recognized game.
Game recognized game, but he does spar with Parris. Janeway steps in and alphas Chakotay. And Janeway says, "You are a member of my crew. I expect you to treat him with the same respect as you would have treat any member of yours. You expect me to treat any member of yours. Now we have a lot to accomplish, and I suggest we all concentrate on finding our people and getting ourselves back home." I really liked Janeway alphaing in this situation.
Yeah, me too. What I really appreciated here was, okay, so ultimately we'll get into it, but like this whole episode's a little convoluted, right? There's like they just tried to throw a lot at us to set this all up, which we'll parse through. But what I enjoy is that it doesn't feel like the first episode. It feels like we are picking up with relationships, dynamics, beef that has been ongoing. It feels and media res, and we just have to, they're not holding my hand. Parts they are, but they're just kind of like, okay, the ball's already spinning. You just got to figure out where everything is, and I like that. I like the feeling of like, okay, we're joining these two separate things in progress, and now they've been intersected, and we've got to sift through the rubble.
Yeah. No, I think both of that is true. So Tuvok theorizes that the whole farm thing was a waiting room to keep people calm before they get experimented on. And Janeway says, "Get the guns. We're going back." Meanwhile, she sets Tuvok to the task of figuring out how to use the array to get them home. Parris, of course, wants to go on the rescue mission to try and save his new BFF, Harry. So they arrive back on the farm with new pew-pews and the deepest of V's.
Yeah, somebody from
in
the
his
Thunderdome.
hockey pads, or his baseball pads.
We don't need another hero. Do we know who this guy is?
Nope.
Okay.
Chest hair.
I'll tell you what, though. There are worse ways to get your first on-screen time on Trek, baby.
Yeah, I mean, deep V's. Deep V's, baby.
They took a 1960s catcher's vest from baseball,
Yes,
cut
they
it
did.
in half, and just threw that over his neck, baby.
They sure did. Yeah, a lot of couches died for the Maquis.
All right, here we go.
So, they arrive back on the farm. They can't find Harry or Torres with the scanners, so they think they might not be on the array. So they come across an old man playing the banjo. And this performance is bold. He says, "Oh, why did you come back? You don't have what I need." And I would say that I'm overdoing it, but I think that's what he did. And Janeway says, "I don't know what you need, and frankly, I don't care. I just want our people back. I want us all to be sent home." And he says, "Oh, well, now, aren't you contentious for a minor bipedal species? This minor bipedal species doesn't take kindly to being abducted. The old man says that he's searching for something and that he's running out of time. And he says, I must honor a debt that can never be repaid, but my search has not been going well. Janeway says, you've taken us 70,000 light years from our home. We have no way back unless you send us, and we won't leave without the others. And he says, but sending you back is terribly complicated. Don't you understand? I don't have time, not enough time. And he winks them back to Voyager. Again, as a vessel for the Caretaker, it just doesn't. It's so hokey, right?
So, like, it wouldn't bother me so much if it's the pilot, right? So,
Yeah.
Granted, the Caretaker, the array, is really just a MacGuffin. It's a plot device to
sure.
get them to where we're going. But it is also, because it's the pilot, a fulcrum on which the whole plot levers, right? So
Right.
you would expect there have been maybe a couple passes at, okay, so when we see the Caretaker, who, for all I know, right, could have been, at this point, the big bad of the series, right?
Right.
He could, and we're coming from the Dominion, baby. We're coming from
We've got some pretty kick-ass
the
badasses.
founders.
Bad
We're
guys,
coming
yeah.
from so, and then this is what I get. I get the dude from Babe, right? Like I get just
Right.
like it's.
And we get the dude from Babe on Star Trek all the time.
We've already got him. At least at this point in the watch, right? We're in the middle, so I'm thinking, okay, there's more. ... He sets up a lot of like, I don't have time to explain right now, which gives me the expectation that it will be explained in a satisfying way. Unfortunately, that doesn't really come to pass.
Yeah, it's just, and I don't mind the basic story beats. It's just the vessel
Well,
is.
I mean, and also in sci-fi, even Trek itself, like the ancient dying alien has taken that, that is like maybe omnipotent, maybe more than like with undefined powers and motivations is a little done. So if we're going to do it again here in a pilot that's launching a show, I had my expectations was a little bit higher, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the ancient dying alien. I'm fine with all the powers. I just want it to be in a cool vessel.
But also, like, yeah, sure. Because whoever developed this array, and I'm going to assume he had something to do with it, that's a incredibly powerful thing, Bob.
Yeah, and like the vessels that we see the Caretaker in are just kind of lame. And I want it to be terrifying or interesting.
Or not
or
at all, dude.
Something.
I'm fine if we never meet the Caretaker. Right?
Yeah.
Because the array itself is such an interesting thing. It's sort of just like,
Right.
that 6-foot satellite, Keith? It's like, what if that was mysterious and all-powerful?
Right.
That's cool.
Right.
Let's just focus on that. But anyway.
Anyway, he says he's not enough time, and he winks them back to Voyager. Somewhere else, Kim wakes up in some sort of medical facility, and he's got some sort of lesions on his arms. B'Elanna Torres is in the next bed and wakes up. She freaks out and starts fighting that door and a bunch of other alien orderlies. She also has lesions. They knock her out and put her back in the bed.
So this is what was happening to us when we in the commercial break before? Or
No.
This is different medical people.
No, because now we're on the Ocampan planet.
Oh, right.
What
Sorry.
was happening to us was the thingy through the chest.
If new friends just joining us, you'll find that even though I watched the episode with you and then by myself, I often have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And
I look forward to Keith's recap because it's thorough.
it is too thorough. So, back on Voyager, they've scanned the pulses the array is shooting and found that they're going to a planet. They assume that Kim and Torres have probably been sent to that planet.
By the array.
By the array. The array winked him over to the Ocampan planet because it's spending...
So theoretically, there is a plan on the Caretaker's part of who he's sending where and why and what for.
Well, we'll explain that later.
Okay.
But yes, there is an intent behind what he's doing. So Tuvok tells an exhausted Janeway that that these laser pews are happening more frequent to the planet.
Check out these props, P.S.
Great props.
So awesome.
And an interesting evolution, right? Because that the pad and the sort of laptop-y deal we see on Next Generation. That's the first version of that. And so for Voyager, they have to come up with what's the 10 years later version of this.
They've
the
got
concept.
a Nintendo cartridge.
Well, that's the pad. They're getting smaller.
Yeah.
I mean, they invented the iPad. So they examine the planet. It's a desert. Something happened to the atmosphere to make it impossibly dry. They're going to head there as soon as repairs on the ship are complete. With a moment to reflect, Janeway looks a little shell-shocked. Half of her crew just died. And she monologues to Tuvok, who seems to be a confidant, about Harry Kim's clarinet. And she says, I barely knew him. I never seem to have a chance to get to know any of them. I have to take more time to do that. It's a fine crew, and I've got to get them home. Tuvok tells her she needs to rest. They clearly have a close relationship, and we learn that Tuvok has a family himself and that he misses them. And Janeway says, I'll get you back to them. That's a promise, Tuvok. So I like the little moment of vulnerability here with Janeway. I think it's good to take this moment and let the stakes of this land on her privately. I think it's a good scene. I think it's an important
Yeah, that she
scene.
feels those things, that she's able to step back and reflect, and she's able to share that. I think that's all important stuff.
And take the feedback from her confidant. Say, like, you're working yourself to death. You need to sleep.
And even the
It's a
little
good-
like character beat with Harry and his clarinet and bringing it home. I think that's all. It's good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like genre defining, but it's good.
No. It's fine, and it may be a little stereotypically Asian, but a little bit. We'll get there. So in Act 4, they fly towards the planet and discover a giant debris field, which we are going to find out later are all the crashed ships from that the Caretaker zoomed from different parts of the galaxy. So, but there's one life form on a tiny ship. They hail him and discover Neelix, who is there salvaging. Once he knows they're not competing for debris, he's very friendly. And he says he's famous for knowing the area well. And he says, well, wait, let me guess. You were whisked away from somewhere else in the galaxy and brought here against your will. And he fills in some of this information. The life form on the array is called the Caretaker, and he has been grabbing ships and doing experiments for months now, and that their missing people are with the species called the Ocampa. They ask him for help, but he refuses unless they have water?
Let me ask you a question real quick before we get too
Yeah.
far into this.
Yeah.
Who does he remind you of?
Well, I think he's supposed to be the Quark, right?
Right, but like the specifics of this design, when I saw it, the whole time watching it, I'm thinking he reminded me of something. My instinct was telling me it was Howie Mandel from Little Monsters, but then I went back and watched that, and he was blue and had horns. It wasn't that.
Right.
I had to search. I came up with it. So this was 94. 95?
95.
1991. The Chevy Chase movie with Dan Aykroyd called Nothing But Trouble. Dan Aykroyd plays this weird character. Right?
That's an old man. Yes.
He's like a monstrous kind of old man. That was it. It's
Now-
very similar.
If that old man had a baby with a hedgehog,
That you have it. Or Rocksteady
would have
Bebop
Neelix.
from
from
Turtles.
Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
So they beam him over. He's never heard of beaming technology before. This is interesting.
So
That-
where we are is like very not up with the times.
In some ways, because apparently they can't make water. Put a pin in that.
Does he need water to leave on? Oh, weird. Okay. Questions.
So
But he's like funny water. He's like, but it's funny. It's like Mad Max, but funny.
yeah, sort of. Yeah. So they beam him over. Yeah, like I said, Neelix energizes and meets Tuvok. He hugs him, and Tuvok is deeply uncomfortable. Perhaps you would care for a bath. A what? So, obviously we're setting up a sort of a fun dynamic here. So we have a little bit of a Quark and Odo happening here. On the medical bay on the Ocampan planet, Torres and Kim chat. Torres flips out again, but she apologizes that it's the Klingon half of her flipping out. So she's only half Klingon. Interesting.
We've had half Vulcan, now we have half Klingon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Ocampa doctor arrives with some clothes and sensible heels. They're free to go. The shoe choices, that's a very strange shoe choice.
It's very B. Arthur.
Very B. Arthur. So they're free to go, and free to wander around the Ocampan city, but they don't know what the lesions are, so they can't cure them. So, now dressed, Kim and B'Elanna walk to the food court.
Keith, what if
Yeah.
your whole house or apartment could be just framed matte paintings from all of the establishing shots?
It would be pretty cool.
Wouldn't that be
like, this
rad?
is a really cool matte painting. Like, it's
a good one.
it's
Apparently,
a
this was filmed
beautiful
at
idea.
the LA Convention Center?
LA Convention Center, yeah. And they clearly have all the water they could ever want, which is good and important.
We're doing a class system scenario.
For sure. So they walk to the food court, and we see this entire species has lived underground in a modern city for 500 generations. But we'll find out later, 500 generations, not as long as you think. But before that, they lived on the surface until global warming ate the atmosphere. This is when the Caretaker arrived and set them up below the surface. Since then, the Caretaker has provided for all of their needs via the energy pulses. So they eat bowls of soggy cat turds, again provided by the Caretaker. We find out that the Caretaker sent Harry and B'Elanna there to quarantine them from the STD they got while being probed, and that there have been many others before that they have sent to the Ocampans, but none have survived. Uh-oh. So in Act 5, Tuvok goes to check in on Neelix, who is singing in a giant bathtub. Neelix has been eating and drinking water like a maniac, having never had access to this much water.
Pretty Woman.
Pretty... yes. Big mistake. And we see, at least for this episode, he had to do more of the body prosthetic.
A lot of prosthetic.
Oof, that's a long day putting that on every morning. So they arrive on the planet, and Neelix is there to help. And he tells Tuvok to look for an encampment and bring water to barter with. So they beam down to the surface, and we see the city of ruins run by the Kazon Ogla, who is a race of trash Klingons who immediately grab Neelix and arrest the rest of them.
If you take the wig off, he's Kratos from God of War.
Oh,
The
yeah, I
bald
don't play
head
God
man.
of War. Yeah.
But it's not even a wig. It's like a... Is that hair?
Yeah, so
Or
it
is
is...
it like paper mache?
It's hair, but I think they're like sponges woven into them. They're going for scary and intimidating and not succeeding.
So I went back and watched the original cut of this. The upscale is good.
Yeah, the upscale's great. Yeah.
Must have been shot on film, yeah.
It was, yeah. So much like Deep Space Nine and Next Gen, it was shot on 35 millimeter, but then edited on video. So they're all arrested, but luckily they say they have water, and the Kazon leader snorts the water like cocaine to prove that it's water, off a toilet seat. They beam 2 large tanks of water down, and Janeway asks for their help in return to reach the Ocampans. This is when we first see an Ocampan woman named Kes. She has been held captive and looks in pretty rough shape, but we don't really know much more about her at this point. So, other than their strange hair, what's your feeling about like this dynamic here on the planet?
It lacked. Maybe it was the score. They lacked a. There was a threat level missing. Maybe it's the design. Maybe it was the. I think the Kess of it all, she does a good job sort of trying to sell it, but I just was not feeling the threat level. I think it's a couple of different things. One, the design is not scary at all, but it's also because of we're trying to tell the story that the technology is different
here. That, our side, we figured out how to beam people, and their side, developed in other ways, which I think is really interesting, and we're going to do that in much more interesting ways later.
Yeah, it's a whole, we're starting a process of like, look, because we're so far away, everything we know about technology and Trek of it is going to be different, which I think is cool. That's a cool promise.
Yeah, the promise of all the aliens being different, all the technology being different, all of that is such an exciting premise. But the fact that they can't create water and yet have spaceships that can travel at warp makes them seem really dumb and not threatening, because, like, you guys haven't figured out water?
Yeah,
And if they have ships, we're going to find out later, they've got big giant ships that are capable of destroying Voyager. But they're still on this planet that doesn't... If they can't make water, but they can travel at warp, why are they on this planet to begin with?
Well, these questions are fine. Like, for me, this is the pilot, right?
Right.
These are questions I'm allowed to carry forward. My fear... Not fear. Where it could go south is that... It's like when we talk about horror movies, Keith. I don't care how ridiculous things are. I don't care how nutty things get. As long as when you establish the rules,
Right.
they are consistent.
It needs to have internal logic. Yes.
So right now what I'm getting is there are different rules here. Cool. 1, you got to tell me what they are. And 2, it's got to be consistent. That's what I'm looking forward to.
And it has to make sense within the rules that
Yeah.
you have established.
Yeah, like a good... Sorry, this is a Wayback Machine, but I'm really still... And I've always been into point-and-click adventure games, which would be kind of boring, because a lot of times it's just like take the doohickey and combine it with the other doohickey to make the doohickey to do the thingy. But
Put pen in hole.
it can be really clever if it's like, oh, I've got to go fishing, but I got to use this pen and stick it on an old, like a old worm and stretch it out and throw,
Right.
if the logic of the universe makes it make sense, then great, the MacGyver of it. So let's see.
Yes. So we find out more about Kes. She's obviously been held captive, is in rough shape, and we learn more details about the Ocampans.
And Neelix seems to know her.
Neelix seems to know her. They only live for 9 years. Their entire lifespan is 9 years. And that the...
Feels like this past year was 9 years.
Yeah, right. So the Kazons caught Kes after she came up to the surface. The Kazons say they don't know how to get down to the Ocampan people, and Neelix bargains for Kes. He clearly knows her. He takes the Kazon leader hostage and zaps the water to distract the rest, allowing them to beam out. When they get back to the ship, it is apparent that Kes and Neelix are in a relationship, and that this was a rescue mission. Interesting. So back on the mall, we see a nice shot of B'Elanna and Kim in silhouette. Great shot. I love that little detail there. They're in pain from the space SCDs. And a woman comes up to them and gives them some medicine. Apparently, some of the Ocampan have broken off from dependence on the Caretaker and have started growing their own food and medicine. But they all know that something is up. She says the Caretaker's been behaving strangely for the past few months, abducting people and increasing the power supply. And he's tripled the energy that he sends through the space goo. And they say we have enough stored energy now to run the city for 5 years. She tells them that some people have gotten out of the society down there by some ancient tunnels to the surface, and she agrees to help them try to escape. Back in the sickbay, the doctor treats Kes, and he tries to throw everyone out, but Janeway abruptly turns the doctor off like a light bulb. It's gotta be annoying for the doctor. So they make a plan for a way to try...
Kathy Rigby?
Kathy Rigby is there to help, and they try to find a way to beam down to the Ocampans, because they are below the surface. More cool matte paintings of the underground civilization. This one is fantastic. What a great image. What a
So
great
much
concept.
water, right?
Tons of water. And our heroes have arrived at the Ocampan city. Kes meets a friend and asks about the aliens. We find out that the Ocampans can speak telepathically. That's interesting. And that there's a political disagreement about their long-term dependence on the Caretaker. Kes wants them to be more independent and references, mysteriously, plant a seed here, that the Ocampans used to have mental abilities that they have lost due to not using them.
I like that.
Yeah, that's an interesting little nugget. Meanwhile, Kim and B'Elanna are walking up an endless staircase, 2 vertical miles below the surface. And so I did the math. That's somewhere around 1,000 floors, 1,000 flights of stairs. Which is...
That guy just climbed it on Netflix.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, so it's like 10 times the Empire State Building, which begs the question.
Do you even lift, bro?
Do you even lift, bro? But like, why would you build stairs, 2 miles of stairs? In what way would that be practical? You'd have like...
They have an escalator.
They have an escalator or an elevator or anything.
In case of fire.
That's your OSHA. It's like, you gotta have stairs. Gotta have stairs. It feels like an awfully impractical way to do this. Especially because it's not like they dug down. The Caretaker built all this for them. So we built them stairs and not an elevator.
I mean, yes. Okay, that aside, though.
Yeah.
If you're like a film or a photography nerd, dude, so many great angles. And angles give you cool shadows. And like, we've just got so many great shots we can do here with the stairs. So thank you, stairs.
Oh, yeah. And they do a really good job with... they only had like, 3 or 4 flights, and to make it feel endless and continue to tell the story up and up and up.
Yeah, this is also shot in 4:3, and much like, no, because not... Deep Space Nine early felt a little claustrophobic. They had a couple of those establishing shots on the promenade where we could see the wraparound, but it felt small. Yeah. This feels pretty expansive throughout. The cinematography has been very good.
Yeah,
the location externals
location
help.
makes a huge,
and the mall has a
of
lot of air, a lot of zoom out.
Yeah, it feels big. It feels big, which is great. So as they're walking up, Kim is sad that he's going to die in his first mission, and we learn that B'Elanna went to the academy as well, but flamed out. We can hear the Caretaker's pulses increasing in frequency, then abruptly stop. And we see from Voyager that the array is realigning position. Our heroes on the beneath the surface can't find Kim and B'Elanna, so Kes figures out they're probably trying to climb the tunnels. And we find that the array is now trying to seal the energy conduits to the Ocampa, to protect the Ocampa from their enemies, the Kazon. But it's causing lots of shaking and banging because he's really, blowing up the tunnels. Tuvok figures out that the Caretaker is dying and is concerned with not being able to continue repaying some sort of a debt to the Ocampans. Parris, Kes, and Neelix start climbing the tunnels too, followed by Janeway, Chakotay, and Tuvok. The Caretaker is sealing the tunnels and blocking but they have to take the stairs because the Caretaker sealing the tunnels is blocking the transporters. They pretty quickly catch up with Kim and B'Elanna because they have the space STDs, and Kes shows them a hole in a force field, and they are able to get out to the top. I thought the visuals of like the break in the force field because the rocks had fallen down was a really cool idea and a cool concept. We've done this before on Trek, but I love the idea of like, we built this wall, but the wall crashes and now we can get around it.
This is definitely an upgrade from the cave set.
Yes. And I think they weren't able to use the regular cave set because Deep Space Nine was using it at the time. I don't remember.
And even with like, they're using a lot of depth of field and out of focus stuff. It's just really some really cool stuff. Lighting is excellent. I mean, technically, this is very, very strong.
Yeah, and clearly there's a lot of money invested in this. They've put a lot of effort into upgrading the visuals for all of this, and that's only going to improve and improve and improve.
The edit
as
is
the
really
series
tight
goes
too,
through.
because I mean there is a ton of setups,
A million setups.
and each one of those setups has 2 or 3 angles and a lot of close-ups and a lot of super wide shots. And it's not like we're cameras with super telephoto lenses. We're having to go way back to shoot that stuff and crane it and all kinds of stuff. So to put this up, to assemble all of this, no wonder it took forever.
Yeah, no joke. So they catch up. So they were able to zap a hole in the rock, allowing them to get to the surface and transport out. But then the surface is hit with another explosion because the caretaker zapping it, and the tunnels rumble. Parris and Neelix stay behind to help Chakotay, Janeway, and Tuvok. Chakotay, because of the rumbling, has a broken leg, and we see the stairs break. Parris saves Chakotay's life and carries him to the surface.
We've done this scene before. What was the scene we're in the cave set and somebody has to help the other person up? Was it a Bashir and a... I mean...
Was it Move Along Home?
we know this beat.
But Chakotay says, you get on those stairs, they'll collapse, we'll both die. And Parris says, yeah, but on the other hand, if I save your butt, your life belongs to me. Isn't that some sort of Indian custom? And Chakotay says, wrong tribe. I don't really know enough to know how offensive that is, but the Indian of it all hits the ear badly.
It does. Especially when it's like, they could have easily just circumvented it by, that's a Klingon thing, right? The life debt.
Yeah,
Reference something in world.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, but again, you're trying to do representation with having a, postcard version of the ideas of it. The score, however, is terrific through this whole section. All right, so in Act 7, they're all rescued, and Voyager needs to head back to the array because 2 Kazon ships are headed towards it. Kim and B'Elanna are apparently healed, despite waking up in sickbay, are also now back in uniform for some reason. We sort of healed their space STD entirely off camera.
That's symbolic of, I think, just kind of the whole episode.
Made no reference to it.
These are
but
furtive commercial breaks in this episode. Lots of things happen.
A lot of things happen during the breaks. You gotta sell some snacks. I get it. So Voyager and the Maquis ship head to the array. They find Jaden the Kazon and the Kazon ships waiting for them there. Jabin doesn't want them to beam onto the array. And he says, I have no intention of letting anyone with your technological knowledge board the array. Why? He doesn't explain why. He just says, I don't want that. I would love for him to articulate more what their goals are here.
It's like the Amish, maybe? It's like their technology will steal the soul or whatever?
Well, no, because they're in warp-capable ships. I think if they were your ability to beam is like having nukes in this part. You're so overpowered.
Is he aware
that's
of
scary.
what their desire for the array is? That they want to super beam back home? Does he know that?
It doesn't say. Which is it would have been an opportunity for Janeway to say hey, we only want to use it to go away and not bother you. So we will stop being a threat. But we sort of don't say why we're about to have this big fight. Regardless, we do, and we pew-pew with the Kazon ships. Janeway puts Parris in the cockpit. Finally. And she beams back onto the array a third time and back into the barn. And she talks with the old banjo guy, who we now know to be the caretaker.
Oh, we knew.
And so she says, we need you to send us back where we came from. Says that isn't possible. I've barely enough strength to complete my work. You're sealing the conduits before you die. If I don't, the Kazon will steal the water. But in a few years, when the Ocampa's energy runs out, it won't matter. They'll be forced to come to the surface and they won't be able to survive. So we learn what we sort of knew at this point, that the caretaker at some point accidentally destroyed the Ocampan planet. So 2 of his species stayed behind to care for them. But his partner left because she got bored. All of the experiments that he was doing was because he was trying to reproduce so someone could keep taking care of the Ocampa. And Janeway says, did you ever consider allowing the Ocampans to care for themselves? They're children. Well, children have to grow up. We're explorers too. Most of the species we've encountered have all overcome some kinds of adversity without a caretaker. It's the challenge of surviving on their own that helps them to evolve. Maybe your children will do better than you think. Which is, an interesting idea here. I think it's a good idea. It's also a lot of parallels here with what Voyager's about to have to do. So back in the battle, a giant Kazon vessel has arrived and is kicking Voyager's ass and disabling their weapons. Chakotay has no choice but to sacrifice his ship by ramming the Kazons. They beam him out right before they hit, but the disabled Kazon ship crashes into the array. Chakotay is rescued and arrives on the transporter pad. He then weirdly goes and touches the transporter chief, who he does not know. It's such an interesting little beat there because I feel like that was an actor choice. I want to do something like
so
chummy and grateful, like I'm a leader and tactile or whatever. But it's a really weird thing. I don't know you, sir. In fact, you're a criminal to me. Why are you being jocular and touching me? Don't touch me.
Feels a little Keith projecty. Didn't really bother me.
Fair enough. Mark.
We need a bumper for that.
Keith is projecting. Don't touch me. So back in the barn, Tuvok says he's figured out how to zap them back to Federation space from the array.
Oh, he don't know it got bumped.
Yeah, but it's going to take a few hours. But the Caretaker has set up a self-destruct program because he can't let the array fall into Kazon hands. And as the Kazon ship damages the array, we get a pretty good green screen effect as the holo emitter fails. So them just zipping back and forth in the two realities, I thought that was a really effective effect.
It's crazy because we now have it on our OBS overlay.
Right, we're doing it now. Yeah. But then that was a real impressive achievement there. And I thought the visuals of the big ship on fire and the crash, I thought looked fantastic.
Everything looked great.
It was really, really impressive. We then, because the holo emitter crashes because of the disaster there, we see the original form of the Caretaker, a goo blob that talks. And it says,
goes the goozle.
The self-destruct program has been damaged. Now, this installation will not be destroyed. But it must be. The Kazon must not be allowed to gain control of it. They will annihilate the Ocampa. He dies and turns into a rock. That I thought Janeway was going to lick for a second. Tuvok then says to Janeway, and this is where we hit the crux of this whole episode, shall I activate the program to get us back? And Janeway says, what happens to the Ocampa after we're gone? Captain, any action we take to protect the Ocampa would affect the balance of power in the system. The Prime Directive would seem to apply. They cannot interfere. And Janeway says, would it? We never asked to be involved, Tuvok, but we are. We are. They beam back to the bridge, and Janeway has made her decision. She has decided to blow up the array, and she warns the Kazon to leave. Torres asks a very sensible question. What do you think you're doing?
Your puppy is pregnant.
Your puppy is pregnant. There's a bland white guy who's nice. That array is the only way we have to get back home. And Janeway says, I'm aware that everyone has families and loved ones at home, and they want to get back to. So do I. But I'm not willing to trade the lives of the Ocampa for our convenience. we'll have to find another way home. What other home is there? What other way home is there? Who is she, meaning Janeway, to be making this decision for all of us? And Chakotay says she's the captain. Which I like that beat. I like Chakotay respecting the chain of command, realizing that they're on her ship. She's the captain. This is the sort of the pivotal decision of the whole series here. They blow up the array, and it looks great. Mm-hmm. Definitely a practical explosion. The Kazon...
Some great acting here. You see the weight of it.
Yeah. The Kazon are pissed.
Look at that. That's like a really great 2 shots, right? This is what acting is, ultimately. Even without dialogue to serve you. Let me see the weight of it. Let me see your resolve. Now I got everything I need.
Oh, that's great. That's really... Go back, show those again. I think that's incredibly illustrative.
Resolve. Both are active. Both are expressing verbs, right?
Yeah.
I'm carrying the weight. I'm fielding the emotional heft. I've made my decision. I'm living with it, accepting the consequences.
That's fantastic. That's really great. And that's Janeway, right? And
that's and correct me if I'm wrong, we talked about, sorry, I'm going to do this a lot. We know what we need is unnecessary Deep Space Nine reference.
Yeah.
One of our top episodes I chose because I felt it defined, in the Pale Moonlight, defined the series. Here, in the pilot, we get a decision, an act, something active, a verb made by a character that seems to me to be the definition, the actual fulcrum on which the whole series will rest.
Yeah, well, I mean, it absolutely sets the terms both practically of the whole series, but also from a moral decision, from practical decision. This is the fulcrum that everything is going to be based on, and for Janeway, it's like, what are the consequences? Why did she make this decision? What does it say about her? What are the consequences of this? How is this decision going to affect her subsequent decisions? Does she regret it? Does she stand by it?
Not only that, but now, like, where does everyone else follow, right? Because everyone's going to have an opinion about her decision.
Absolutely. So before the Kazon peace out, Jabin says, "You have made an enemy today."
All right.
So, learn to make water.
Yeah.
Later, Janeway is alone in her ready room. Parris arrives. She explains to him that she has invited the Maquis members to become part of the crew. Chakotay will be the first officer because he was captain of the other ship, which seems like a really fair compromise. And Parris is getting a field commission straight to lieutenant.
Where's his pips, brah?
Hey, you're gonna give him later. It doesn't have him yet. Didn't print the pips ahead of time. Obviously, Neelix and Kes asked to go along.
Please tell me that they update her character design. That we learn some lessons.
I ain't telling you. I ain't telling you nothing. She's gonna fly out at the end of it, over the audience. That's the important part. Then Janeway gives the speech that sets the course of our adventure. And she says, "We are alone in an uncharted part of the galaxy. We have already made some friends here, and some enemies. We have no idea the dangers we're going to face, but one thing is clear. Both crews are going to have to work together if we're to survive. That's why Commander Chakotay and I have agreed that this should be one crew, a Starfleet crew. And as the only Starfleet vessel assigned to the Delta Quadrant, we'll continue to follow our directive to seek out new worlds and explore space. But our primary goal is clear. Even at maximum speeds, it would take 75 years to reach the Federation."
Yeah, day late and dollar short for that exposition.
Yeah, but I'm not willing to settle for that. There's another entity like the Caretaker out there, and somewhere who has the ability to get us there a lot faster. We'll be looking for her, and we'll be looking for wormholes, spatial rifts, or new technologies to help us. Somewhere along this journey, we'll find a way back. Mr. Parris set a course for home. And that sets us on our entire journey. It's lots to talk about. So what we do now in this episode is we do our after show, which is some sort of an awards show. And for Deep Space Nine, this was the Alamo Remmies. And so we don't have what our awards are yet. So we will come up with it. I have my Alamo Remy right there from JD. So when we figure out what our award show will be, we'll get a bumper and we'll set this up. But in the meantime, we're just going to we're just going to arrive here. We're going to elegantly stated.
Thank you.
You stole the goblet from the Lizard King. Now you'll have to feel his elemental sting. You got nowhere to hide, nowhere to run.
Welcome to our first Voyager interview with my older brother, Sean Varney, Emmy-nominated sound designer on Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Enterprise.
Thank you for having me. It's great to see you guys again. It's actually going to be fun because I have never actually watched an episode from beginning to end.
I'm a little blown away because I guess I envision the storybook version where you're sitting behind a huge console and you've got playback happening and you're doing things in real time to playback. So I'm guessing that's not how this works.
Oh, that's definitely how that works. But the playback happens in like seconds, 2-3 seconds length period, and then you go through and you create sound and you lay it in at sync. I can go on forever and ever about like the specific details, but you play that couple seconds over and over again for hours, and then move on to the next couple seconds and the next couple seconds, and so you're building these layers of sound, these layers of storytelling elements. But when you're finished, first of all, you've spent 80-90 hours. You never want to see that episode ever again. But you'll spot check maybe the scene, like from start to finish, the scene, make sure there's no mistakes, make sure that it flows okay, that you're not covering dialogue with any of your sounds, and that sync is okay, and there's all kinds of stuff but yeah, I never ever watched the episode afterwards. I was pleasantly surprised watching episode 1. I was like, this isn't bad. I'm used to, because you hear the same line over and over and over and over again as you're doing stuff, and it starts to get annoying and all, like people's characteristics and whatever. But I'm so separated from it now. I'm like, and it answered all these questions that I never really cared enough to learn the answers to, but I always kind of wondered
why are we here?
And so having those things answered was kind of interesting. I loved hearing the sounds again and again with the earbud experience. I was like, I could actually hear things and like see some of the decisions that I wasn't making at the time, but were the same decisions that I would make later on, and like kind of experiencing that. For the most part, the purpose of sound design is to help sell the reality of the environment. And then there are some that are storytelling, but the vast majority are just establishing the universe. The Caretaker was sending those energy pulses to the planet,
right?
To very violently charge their batteries, I guess, or something like that. But I loved hearing that constantly in the background while they were in the city and on the surface and all that kind of stuff. It was like this boom, boom. And one thing that it reminds me of is the whole timing thing between when you can see something and when you can't see something. And the easiest example for that are the red alerts that happen on the set, where it's just like, boom, red alert. Well, they're filming and cutting their lines and reshooting and all that kind of stuff, and that light is just going on a steady pulse. But the video that you're working with is not a steady every 10 seconds pulse. It is all over the place. And you're not always seeing it, but then you see it. So you've got to time it in a way where when you see it, it has the sound, but when you don't see it, it's still continuing at a same pace, but then lines up again with the random light that when they cut back to it. It's
fascinating.
crazy. And the reason I thought of that is those pulses, you see them coming down from the sky, and then it's this constant thing in the background, and you never notice that, like, wait a minute, those pulses were crazy out of sync. So much so, and you got used to it being a really steady thing, so much so that it was actually a storytelling element when it sped up.
Right.
June, 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 June. Just the sequence of it was a prompt for the characters to respond to something. The earlier part when the Maquis teleport to the bridge, there's a bit of ADR that's off camera, and it's supposed to be one of the randos that you know are going to get killed because you don't recognize the actors, and it's like it's something like they're armed, Captain, or something like that. And,
Yes.
and it was so out of place to me. it sounded so like it just didn't fit. And you know, the ADR universe is really hard to do. You know, human communication is so hard to replicate, and you know, doing things in the studio, you know, in a studio as opposed to on set, really difficult unless you're a fantastic actor like Sir Patrick.
But then you think about the tapestry and all of the different people, down to the specialist who makes the beeps and the sound beds. What was your turnaround? Like, from we got the stuff to I got to deliver. How long did you have to work on it?
Oh, we usually had about 2.5 weeks per episode.
And then somehow there's like a TV show.
Well, and
And-
not only is there a TV show which aired to 26 million people, but or
Right.
22 million people watched the pilot of this.
Not all TV shows have the resources to put things together like Star Trek.
This was fun.
Yeah, for sure.
It was fun. Thanks for having me.
We always begin with the best moment. What was your best moment?
Man, there's some great stuff in this episode. I think it's the moment Janeway makes that decision, because her performance this whole episode, in an episode that is very uneven and very sort of everything in the kitchen sink, whether it makes sense or not, there is a consistency, a rigidity, a straight line in her performance that connects so many disparate dots. It's almost as if we're on a really chaotic Disney ride, and you can't see the rail, but she is that rail, and we are just riding it, and it gets us through. And for everything that doesn't make sense, when she makes that decision, whatever MacGuffins be damned, there's weight, and it makes it all worth it. And that could really, if we didn't feel that weight, this could be a lost pilot. Despite the money, despite the technical achievements, despite some really great stuff, I think there are enough stumbling blocks here that it could have tripped on and fell on its face. But it doesn't, because of the strength of her performance, I believe. And so I'm going to give it that. Janeway's decision, and it's brief, but her performance through it is my best moment.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you caught that and isolated that, because I think that is the most successful moment of the pilot. And I think the whole show sort of hinges on her being our guardrail and our guidepost. And do we trust her to be our captain, right? So for me, I think it's the exposition that arrives too late for me, and I think it's the resolution, right? It's the two disparate crews coming together in this emergency situation to work together. And I think it is the sort of like open door. The premise of this show is so good. Mm-hmm. The concept of this show, we have one objective, one clear objective right from the pilot: get home. We have an impossible obstacle. We are 75 years away. We are in our Star Trek world on a Star Trek ship, and we have the promise that every world will be a new world. Every civilization will be a new civilization. And that we have this focus right? Because Next Gen and the original series were about exploration. Deep Space Nine had sort of the focus thrust upon it through outside focus. This has that pinpoint focus in which everything that we encounter and we choose, every choice we make, is about one singular purpose, and that's get home. And I think that is where, look, I think there's a lot here that's, not as successful as I'd like it to be. But the premise of this story, I think, is remarkably successful. That last speech, every decision we make from here is going to be about getting home. How do we do it? We're going to beg, borrow, and steal. We're going to try this. We're going to search for this. We're going to do that. And, regardless of the decision-making that got us to this predicament, she, as the captain setting the objective, I think was an exciting thing for the crew, an exciting thing for us as the audience.
I also think, you bring up a great point there that not only is it a very simple premise in that we know what our one objective is now, but additionally, when we meet these new species, go to these new planets, all the new, we know that potentially everyone could be an ally. Or even if they are not an ally and they are antagonistic, we can't just pew-pew them because they may have the technology or sit with information that could lead us to our ultimate objective. So it puts stakes on every encounter, even if it's Freak of the Week type episode. Is this a... So there's a lot of potential.
There's a lot of potential there, and we have no allies yet. Like, we have the Ocampans, but apparently they're just kind of sitting there eating bowls of cat turds, right?
Yeah, right.
So we already have an enemy, and we don't have any allies, and we just don't know what we're going to be coming up on. So that's our best moment. The last thing we always do here, and stick around this one for our interview with Sean, or maybe it was earlier in the episode. Who knows?
Yeah,
we haven't decided
that's
yet.
True.
But what we do here is we hand out our rating of the episode ranked in Deep Space Nine. It was 1 out of 100 self-sealing stem bolts. For this one, we have to figure out what our currency is going to be. It was self-sealing stem bolts. We don't have to come up with one now. We just need to, folks out there, leave your suggestions below. What should we be ranking this?
I say we
in?
have to set a deadline for when we have to decide, because we can't be sitting in this. It's like when you don't name your pet.
No, next week.
Yeah.
We will have one by next week.
Right, so for this week alone, we're going to call them orphaned puppies, because Janeway has orphaned.
How many orphaned puppies does this get, Mike?
So let me start with...
It's terribly sad. That's the saddest currency I can think
I know,
of.
that's crazy. But I've said it, and now it is real.
As
is often the case.
Dark place.
As often is the case, interject sad, just like puppy cries.
How many Sarah McLachlan commercials do we have?
So, technically, like I said, this is outstanding. The money is on the screen. The SFX are great. Even when they're not great, they're pretty dang good. The mix of practical effects and digital effects, wonderful. The score is absolutely incredible. The setups are numerous. The cinematography is strong. The performances... so wait, hold on. I'm still technical. What else? The editing is very good. The pacing, with the exception of, like, it got a little weird when they first go to the array, but for the most part, is well done. And I think, narratively, we get where we're going, right? So technically, it's a 100. It's technically, I think it's for a pilot, and it's so great. Narratively, it's kind of some hot mess. It's a lot of the problems we have with Strange New Worlds now, which is we got some highbrow concepts, right? The initial concept, super great, super powerful thing, blasts up, beams us super far away, right? Unfortunately, the array becomes pretty uninteresting. The person controlling the array is pretty forgettable and uninteresting. The bad guys we establish really weak across the board. So that's disappointing. In some cases, like I'm probably letting it off the hook because the hokiness of it really created some problems. And then there's just too much plot happening. I felt like it was a sandwich with so much meat in it, like a Carnegie Deli. I couldn't even get my mouth around it to really understand half of it. So much is happening off screen, and then we have
there are like some strawberries in the brisket.
Yeah, and there's a whole disease angle which is uninteresting, or and then it just gets blipped away, and then there's the other bad guys, then there's these people versus those people, and there's just too much. To a point where it's just noise and you're like, okay, what can I focus on? Thank goodness the lead performance is outstanding. And to learn that it happened amidst that kind of a turnover is incredible to me. It really brings me to Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly and them having to recast Eric Stoltz.
Stoltz, yeah.
And how we were like, how could anyone else have been Marty? Like, how could anyone else have been Janeway? It is, So thank goodness, right? Thank goodness. And it's insane to me how much her just sheer force of performance and will allows me to just forget about the BS. And it had a backbone. It had a spine. A lot of the conflict with the other cast members are interesting enough that I'm on the hook. There's a lot of them. There's a lot. But I never felt like, even now, and I don't really even know a lot of what happened, even now it's okay, because I know that, okay, they're setting the table. We will explore these things deeper. And some of them are really interesting. Some I'm less interested in currently, but that could change. But at the end of the day, really strong setup for an adventure. We far away. I made a decision to keep us far away, even though we could have gone home. I blew up the home beamer, and now we've got to, despite the odds, go figure out a way to get home. I had a question for you real quick before I level my score.
Yeah.
We got winked away not long after leaving Deep Space Nine, yes?
Right.
Is there an Easter egg in Deep Space Nine where they mention some sort of radical, huge energy blast that blips a radar when they get zippy-zapped?
But we have established that ships go missing in the Badlands.
Oh, the
Badlands,
right.
We know.
Okay.
This we know.
Missed opportunity there. Because I feel like that kind of, somebody would have pinged an IP address on that bad boy.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would, but again, I think the idea of the Badlands is it's such a mess in there. There's no way to know what's happening.
They stick the landing. I would say they stumble on a couple of their quad Lutzes, to stick with the Olympics. You know what I mean? Technical scores high. The artistry. Well, we gotta. I don't envy the writers trying to get this many people on. So definitely above average. I don't think it's an all-time classic. Damn, the score was good though. Damn, that performance was good.
Great. Yeah.
I wish there was a better bad guy right now, but you know what? Sometimes just being far away from home is a good enough bad guy. It worked for Dorothy, right? I'm going to say 80 sad orphaned puppies. But well taken care of because they have a really, really nice daddy.
They've got a very nice dad.
That dog is a national treasure.
Those who don't know, she is a 15-year-old. We just held her quinceañera. Chihuahua. She has no teeth. She's completely blind. Her back legs don't work because of a congenital defect.
And much like the Ocampas, we must protect her at all costs.
We must protect her at all costs, even though she dearly hates me. She only likes Jillian.
She's unaware of who you are at this point.
She gave up. Jillian's out of town.
Your warmth. You exist as simply a feeling.
I am literally the caretaker.
Yes. You have the banjo. I mean, it's pretty on the nose, if you will.
I'm an old guy. So before I get into it, because I think it is the most interesting question of the episode. Janeway's decision, right? Now, granted, she did not have a lot of time to make this decision. And I think on some level they're trying to make it give her a little bit of wiggle room by having the big ship there that they were. No, they killed the big ship. So yeah, they don't have that. She could have sent themselves home with the array. And let's say that we didn't come up with any other way to do it, because I can think of like 6. But let's say that the parameters are what she says.
It's difficult because they had a very specific mission, and that mission was accomplished. They got them all back. Everybody's safe and sound and healed. We could have gotten everybody back. Plus, you've got a lot of dead people on your ship that their loved ones should probably be notified.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any true agency or need to protect any of these people, really. And we are only tacitly told that there's some sort of like a genocide adjacent activity, like mass extinction event for that species through the Caretaker, who is an unreliable narrator at best and a straight antagonist at worst. So I can't say I'm 100% on the side of Janeway's decision, but it was hers to make.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that... Okay, so my thoughts on the episode as a whole. I agree with you on all the technical elements. I think that there's some really successful pieces here. I just think that at the end of the day, this was a sort of boring and confusing way to establish a fantastic setup. And I think that there was a lack of clarity in the writing. The A to B to C, we went from A to Z and then back to C, and nothing was really that clear. Like, so many things happened, and yet, even still, I don't quite understand all of those elements. I don't quite understand why we did some of the things. The Caretaker as a character was neither scary nor particularly interesting. The moral quandary is muddy because we don't really understand these, and this is one of the problems that you have going to the other side of the going to a different quadrant, is we don't have any of the table stakes with these races of characters, right? If these were the Romulans and the Bajorans, right, we would understand a lot of the subtext, like, oh, well, they would definitely this or that, or they definitely have this limitation or not. We just don't have enough context to make it particularly interesting. I mean, the Kazons and the water, right? Are the Kazons indigenous to this planet? Or are they not? So I think the Ocampans are the indigenous species. Then the Caretaker zapped the environment, so they went underground. Then the Kazons, sort of like pirates, came to try to take their resources. But if you have the ability to go to all the planets in the universe, why would you go to one with no water and no resources? And why would you be battling for generations trying to get down to something that you can just go to most other planets and have unlimited access to? So are the Kazons, like, it's just like, there's just so many of these like little logical things. Why are we doing a hoedown?
That for sure. But like those bigger questions, see, what it doesn't make clear, what sort of does, I was left feeling a little bit like, oh, perhaps these are questions to be answered, because there's sort of omnipotence of the Caretaker, and he had a partner. So are we going to re-meet them later? So I'm just looking at those as open questions. Yes, her pitch at the end is very much open-ended, but so I'm unclear, and I don't want to spoiler, obviously.
I'm speaking only from the perspective of knowing what we know from this episode.
Okay, cool.
I'm not speaking from what we're going to learn later. It's that I want to feel in safe hands at the end of this episode to know that even if I don't know the answers, there are answers. And not that these are dangling chads, things we haven't really thought through yet.
Moving forward, though, just for my level set, Kes and Neelix are the only people who have any familiarity with this quadrant.
In our group.
In our cohort.
In the people that we know thus far. Yes, they are the only two people who are from this quadrant.
And it's so far away that we've never studied it. There was no Starfleet maps.
We have absolutely no maps, no study. We don't know any of these players. We don't know anything about anything. And so that's the really interesting part. That's the exciting part to all of this. So, look, I think that there are just pieces of this that I really wish we could go back and do some rewrites. Because all the other elements of it are so interesting. Now, just to level set, to be, I think I want to be open and fair with our audience and sort of where I'm coming from. And to level set our next couple of, our immediate future. And I said this on the watch along. And I really mean this. Voyager is a grower, not a shower. Right? That it is much like every other Star Trek series from this era. It takes some time to build the momentum that it's eventually going to get. But when it gets there, it's going to be really exciting. So, I beg patience while we're sorting through this world that we're in. It'll be worth it, I promise. So, and there's some great stuff coming up almost immediately, but sort of like as a pilot, right? I remember watching this and I was like, right? And it wasn't until, and in fact, I didn't, because I went to college and that kind of stuff, I didn't keep up with the series until later, until I was an adult. And when I finally got through the first bit and like got into the meat of it, I'm like, oh wait, this is great.
Right.
And so in a lot of ways it's similar to Deep Space Nine, right? Where its audience has been growing and growing when people who sort of gave up on it come back to it and give it the full chance. So I'm excited to, as a series, do that. Right? And look at it as what it is and be honest about how we feel about it and watch as it grows and builds momentum and becomes really exciting. So,
well, sorry, I keep it.
Yeah, please.
There are like really well-reviewed and well-anticipated upcoming Voyager video games. More so than I see for a lot of the stuff, that are like strategic and role based. So I'm excited about getting through enough that I can play them.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we're done.
Not yet. I know.
So as a pilot, for me, I don't think this one is as successful as Emissary. It feels, I was going to say like Encounter at Farpoint, which really wasn't that great, but this is just sort of muddier. Then like Encounter Farpoint was like, okay. This one had some higher elements, but felt pretty muddy. And so for me, it gets 76. Abandoned Flerps. So, folks, tell us what you think. I really want to know what you think. Patrons out there, let me know which 100 words to read and then write the whole rest of the treatise. We're going to read every single comment. Where did you agree with us? Where did you disagree with us? What kind of segments would you like us to see? What are your ideas for our award? So on and so on. Really grateful for you watching this and coming along the journey with us. We're going to grow. And just like the show, and we'll get better.
We'll never show though.
We're never gonna show. But we're really excited to be here. Really excited to be starting this journey. I know both of us were giddy at the prospect of starting this new show. So it's gonna be really, really fun. This is gonna be a long journey. We're gonna be so old when this is done. And we said that when we started Deep Space Nine, and guess what? We were
Yeah,
old.
and people like universally, it was cool because Deep Space Nine is pretty much, many people share the opinion that it's sort of the bastard stepchild of.
It's the black sheep. Yeah.
And so people, I think, it's really cathartic to see somebody new watch it and feel the same way. This, I think, it's a different track. I think there's, at least in my experience engaging with folks, is that there's a sort of negative connotation with this one, or like a disappointment factor that I'm hoping maybe when we re-explore it, we can shed some of that baggage, perhaps.
Well, I think there are two camps with Voyager, right? I think there's the camp that gave up and see it as sort of a lesser show. And there's the camp that stuck with it and became deeply loyal and deeply appreciative of it. Because, and I started in camp 1, I ended in camp 2. Okay. And I think that it is, it becomes something great. It just, a lot of people gave up on it before it did, which was also true of Deep Space Nine. So we're gonna have a similar journey, I think. So very excited to go on the journey with everybody. Before or after this will be our scintillating clip of an interview we did with my brother Sean, who worked on the show. So that's gonna be fun. Can't wait to get what his thoughts were on this pilot, because I don't think he saw the full pilot until probably this week. So that will be interesting to get his views on it, which you will see now or have already seen. Who's to say? Time is not linear.
It's true.
But thank you so much. Next week, we'll be discussing Parallax. What's going to happen? I don't know. Till then, for the very first time, this has been Keith and Mike Watch Star Trek Voyager. Thank you so much for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, like and subscribe. Or you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/K&M. Spell out that and.
They had a little poopy in their pants.
It's a lot of poopy. Paramount poopy.
The poop.
For poop. Poop back up.
Raw dog it?
We're gonna poopy.
The poop.
For poop.
Okay.